Hi, we're going to start in just a moment, so if everyone wants to find a seat and settle in, I see we have some folks coming in. We have a lot of manuals. We have a lot of things to cover today, and I know many of you have come with questions. In fact, I just heard from one institution that said they were up late into the night making sure they get all their questions down. So I think we're going to have a very busy session. And I do want to assure everyone that I will be able to stick around afterwards to answer any questions, and I think other staff members will be available also. So welcome. We're very happy to have all of you here with us today. This is something that way back in February I was talking to Kim from the LMO colleges at TARE. There she is, who is saying, I'm new in this position and we're really trying to, make sure that we understand the manuals and everyone on staff is on the same page, and we'd love if you could do some training. And I started thinking about it and thinking about when would be the best time, and I thought, well, lots of people come to Austin for TACRO in the summer, and as it turns out, there's this afternoon in between the two meetings that was open, so we thought we'd give this a try and really kind of dig in as much as we can to all the manuals in 3 hours. In the past, we've done trainings on specific manuals, so this will be something new, at least in the time I've been at the coordinating board, to try to do something broad, but for both experienced as well as new reporting officials and IR folks. So we're going to see how this works. As I said, this is new. We are also taping this. We have lots of folks listening in from home as well. So we are hoping that we will have some tapes when this is over that we can post online and maybe parse them out by report, so that if you had some questions about the aid or wanted to listen again to something was said, you could go back and find the section on the 008 that was discussed and just listen to that. So that's our hopes. We've been told we should be able to do that to break out the manuals. I would imagine we'll have lots of questions going through. What we've decided to do, everyone should have an agenda that they picked up on the way in. You can see that lots of manuals, and we also did print out those the record layout for the layouts for each one, so that if you wanted to have a little reminder of a question, it's obviously too much to print out all the manuals for everyone, but we thought that would be a useful thing for folks to have. And because people are finishing up with the university TACRO section and they're probably on their way home, and new people are coming in from the CTC meeting, we've put the health-related and university reports first. There might be some crossover. You might learn something, but just be aware of what report we're talking about. Then we're going to move into end-of-semester reports. In the middle section, we'll talk about the 8. I am going to be, and Doug Parker is going to be doing most of the morning session, most of the early session on the health-related and the university reports. Paul Turcotte is going to be talking about the 8. I am going to jump in and talk about the 00S and the 002. So kind of that middle section will focus on end-of-semester reports. And because those reports are similar across institution types, I'm going to cover them just once, rather than have a time for the university and time for the CTCs. Once we're done with that third section on the end-of-semester reports, then the university folks are welcome to leave if they want to, or they can stick around for questions, and then we'll move into the CTC. So as we were practicing and getting ready for this, we at one point thought, let's get through it and then have questions at the end of each of these 4 major segments. But then it seemed like we were going to have time to answer questions as we go through. So we're going to start that way, allow you to answer questions as we go through report by report, and then if it seems like we're going too slowly, then we might have to say, let's get through the material and jump into questions at the end of the larger segments. But I think it might be best, as you're thinking about things and hearing things, to take questions as we go along. So that's our plan for now. I guess I should introduce myself. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Julie Eklund. I am currently serving as Interim Assistant Commissioner in the Division of Strategic Planning and Funding, and I've been there it'll be 10 years now in August. We have several staff members who are going to be presenting. We've got them up on the board, and we will introduce them as we move along. And we also have staff members who work in the Education Data Center or in the division who have joined us for the training, and I want to just take a minute to introduce them. Doug, I don't know if you want to come introduce we'll let Doug introduce his folks, but I did want to introduce Mr. Bill Abasolo, who has just joined the division as the Director of Strategic Planning and Analysis, and we're very happy to have him with us. He's been with us about 6 weeks, and he is so he is new in the division, and many of you will be hearing from him moving forward. He may be the one up and presenting this type of thing with Doug as we move on. And also, I guess most of the rest of the folks are your folks, so I'll let you just...
Okay. Well, up here we've got Anissa Wagner. She's going to be giving us a talk on the Community College CBM 09 a little bit later. We've got Crystal Mooney helping us with our PowerPoint slides. Tanya Trevino on the microphone there. Torcia Bunton on the other microphone. Do you have anybody else?
I didn't mention Jana. So Jana Kosser, who, sorry about that, is a very important person who works on the CBM 002 and data on that. So she is the person who is going to be taking questions. So if folks in the field folks who are listening from their institutions want to send in questions, we're going to have an email address for her. I don't know if it's up there yet, but we'll have her email so you can send her questions during the session, and we'll make sure to get to those. If we can. If we run out of time, we'll make sure to get back to people via email. So am I missing any? Doug's gonna sit back. He's got a lot. He's gonna be talking for a while, so he's gonna sit back on the dais. And I think those are the main administrative things that we want to handle. We'll take it as it goes in terms of a break. I'm thinking we have an awful lot to cover, so the best thing might be to just feel free to get up and take a break if you need one. If you could just try to do so quietly. The restrooms are in the hall right out here, so you can go out through the back, and they're in the center, right in the center of that hallway where you entered. And we do have a little break room that has sodas. You can use a credit card. That's right at the front of the hall. Right before you get to the double doors, if you go to the right, if you're heading towards the front of the building, there's a room where you can get a soda, and it's a self-pay. You can just use a credit card to pay. So again, if you need to get up, feel free. If we feel like we're making good time, we'll go ahead and we'll take a break for everyone. But otherwise, we do want to try to get through the material. So I think with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Doug Parker, who's the director of our Education Data Center. Doug has been at the coordinating board for, are we up to 30 yet? Almost 30 years. So he has been working with CBM data for a long time and has a great deal of expertise. I know he spends a lot of time working with all of you in the field, and we very much appreciate the time that he spends. So we're happy to have him here to begin our training. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Also, just wanted to point out we've got some water over here as well, cups and cold water if y'all want that. So the first thing we're going to head on into is, here's the agenda, and Julie went over that, the health-related, the university reports, and then all of the end-of-semester reports together, and then the community and technical colleges reports. Okay, so we'll start with the health-related institutions student report, CBM 01. It is the reason for the report. It reflects all the students enrolled in the reporting institution as of the official census date. And so we collect student demographic information on there and the semester credit hours generated by the students. They're reported in different categories: funded, unfunded, interinstitutional. And again, this is a census date report, and the data is used in formula funding calculations. And is also used in the accountability system. So most of you, I think, know about the accountability system. You can look in there. You can look under the health-related institution reports. It'll give you different data points about the students at the health-related institutions. And also, we just use it in any other reports that the legislature or internal ad hoc requests are given to us. This is just an outline of the report. I think was that in the packet they received?
Yeah,
all
different.
Everyone
got the
okay.
Record. Do you have the HRI and the record layout? Yep, it's
okay,
there.
Great.
Good.
And that was half of it. You can see at the very bottom just a little bit of trivia about it that the medical and dental students aren't. We don't collect certain information on them, high school code, things like that, because hopefully they're out of high school, they're not freshmen. Okay, the next one is Health Related Institutions Faculty Report, the CBM 008. Again, it reflects the employees of the institution who are paid a salary or receive benefits with the institution and have any type of faculty appointment regardless of source. And you must be on the payroll as of October 1st. Again, faculty demographics are collected. The salary and appointment percentages are collected. It's an annual report. Health institutions only report this in the fall semester each year. Again, the data is used in the accountability system and any HRI reports where faculty information is required. And again, there's the report layout. Well, we're going to do this fast.
I don't know if we want to stop for questions at the end of each, since the HRIs are, I think, pretty straightforward reports. Do we have people here with us from the health-related institutions? Do we have anyone? Oh, good. Okay. All right. Yeah, we do have a few. I'm glad to see that. Okay. Well,
Yeah,
speak up if you have
Lincoln
any
is now a
questions.
health-related
Yes,
institution
Lincoln from UT Austin is now going to understand the health-related institution report better than he has in the past.
And then we have the graduation report, the CBM 09. Again, reflects any degrees conferred within the previous fiscal year. Again, demographic information is collected for the graduates. You can only report the degrees in the inventory of approved degree programs, and then need to enter a separate record for each degree a student is awarded during the reporting period. Again, it's an annual report during the fall semester. Now, this is used in the nursing shortage reduction program calculations, and it's also used in the accountability system where any HRI graduation information is required or requested. Again, here's a layout of the report. It's going to be pretty much like the other graduate reports that we have. Okay, now we're going to do the CBMO-R, which is pretty unique to the health institutions. It's the residents and fellows report. So what this collects is data on the medical residents and the postdoctoral research fellows as of September 1 of each year. Again, demographic information is collected for those residents and fellows. This is a pretty important deal. The individual residents or fellows can only be reported by one institution for a given year. So if that person went to more than one institution, the institutions are going to need to get together and decide who is going to claim that person. They've also, each of their programs they're in, they have a maximum amount of years that they can go or be in that program, and they should not be reported once they exceed that maximum number. There's also an edit check on the report in the program to make sure that if the person is reported for more than the number of years, that will create an error. Again, this is an annual report. It is used in formula funding calculations, and it is used in the accountability system. And here's the report layout for it. And we'd like to point out that in the edit report, you should address all year-to-year review items on your edit report when you send in the certification request. That helps keep the data as clean as possible. Okay, so for the two HRIs, folks here, are there any questions? Okay. All right, well, we're going to head on into the university reports then. Do you have anything you'd like to add, Julie?
I didn't know if you wanted, as you begin this, to talk a little bit about how the reports are structured in terms of we have a manual for each type of institution, and then each report is found.
Okay, well, yes, if you go onto our reporting manuals page, and you can get there from the main website or through TXHIGHEREDDATA.org, texhighereddata.org. You can get to the reporting manuals through there as well. We have a reporting manual for the universities, for the public universities, the public community colleges, the health-related institutions. There's also one for the independent colleges and universities of Texas, the TCUs, SMUs, St. Edwards of the state, as well as for the proprietary institutions or out-of-state. It's got a real long name because it encompasses a whole lot of different institution types. But basically, out-of-state institutions that are teaching online courses in Texas and all that. So those reporting manuals can all be found on that reporting manuals page. Okay, so we can head on into the university reports. CBMA 01 is the student report. And again, it reflects all the students enrolled at the reporting institution as of the official census date. Again, demographic information is collected. Semester credit hours generated by the student are reported in different categories. Again, it's a census date report, and it is used in the accountability system and any university reports where student information is required. One of the big things, one of the things we get a lot of questions on is our undergraduate students approaching funding limit for baccalaureate degree reports that we create. So we create 6 reports. Students who were in higher education prior to fall 1999 are exempt from the funding limit. Those between fall 1999 and summer 2006 are subject to a 45-hour funding limit, and those after those fall 2006 and later are subject to a 30-hour funding limit. And the 30 and 45-hour limit is the 45 or 30 hours more than their degree program, which is reported on the CBMA 01. And any student who exceeds, the state will not fund those hours above that limit. An institution, university they do not have to charge the student that extra amount. Many of them choose to, and that would be the out-of-state rate typically for the student per semester credit hour. So what we try to do is at the end of every semester, when the CBMA 01s are all certified, we run a report that gathers in all of the semester credit hours that a student was funded for in that semester, and we add it to a database. And then so the next semester, when the CBMA 01 edit runs, it checks against that database for all of your undergraduate students that you have reported. And then if it finds them and they fall within these limits or in these categories, then we'll produce a report. So what we do is produce 3 reports for each of the limits, 30 and the 45. It will talk about approaching the funding limit, which means they're within 30 semester credit hours of the limit. Those who will exceed the funding limit after the current semester, and those who have exceeded the funding limit prior to this semester. The item 27, student affected by undergraduate funding limit flag, is used to determine the funding limit the student is affected by. That's very important that you're consistent with that if you know the student falls into one of these categories, that you flag that student that way throughout their academic career at your institution. We have seen times where the students would be reported with different codes in different semesters, and that just shouldn't happen.
I do want to mention in Appendix P, we have an example table around excess hours that you can actually look at if you want to see some examples of how excess hours are calculated. I think, Doug, we're probably moving into a phase now where the vast majority of students, the 30-hour rule does apply. Would that be correct?
That's correct, yeah. We're prior to 1999, that's now, getting close to 20 or 16 years. So, yeah, there's a lot of people are finally dropping out.
Or graduating. Yes.
Excuse me. I meant dropping off the report.
Completing, exactly. No, I knew what you meant.
Glad you said.
Yes.
The other big item on that is item 26, and that tells us the number of semester credit hours in the undergraduate degree program. Typically, it's 120, but some programs may be a little more, a little less. So, a person between fall of '99 and summer of '06, would have 165 hours typically to finish their degree before they would go to hit the limit.
Now, it may be your next slide, so correct me if I'm jumping the gun here, but someone did ask me at the TACRO session this morning, when they have a student who has excess hours and they want to, provide the information to us. Mm-hmm. First, they asked who should be contacted because Susan Brown is no longer here, and I believe that should go to you now. If someone has a question about, I'd like to just explain that process. If we have a student who would like to know their excess hours, you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
So if a student comes up on one of these reports, let me back up, and they feel they have not taken that many hours, there's kind of an appeals process put out there, and what the student can do is sign a form allowing you to access the hours that they have accumulated throughout their academic career. And so it's a form basically the student signs, puts their Social Security number on, prints their name, and then y'all will fax it to us, and Crystal Mooney is the one who typically will run those reports. So she'll get the fax, and then she'll run those reports and put them in your output folder on the secure FTP server. And at that point, then you and the student can look through the report and see if if it's true or not. Maybe they thought some of the hours they took did not apply, but they ended up doing it. I've never been in on that process from y'all's end, so not sure how that works.
Yeah, and a few sessions ago, they removed dual credit hours, students who are in high school who are taking college-level courses from the excess hours count. So I think that sometimes leads to some issues in terms of the reporting and what you might have on your records for when a student, for the hours that they have and what we might show. So it's important that everyone understand that process is available if there's some discrepancies between what you have and what a student believes should be on file in terms of excess hours.
Yes.
And I think probably those inquiries could be directed to me or to Doug if you have a question come up. But we have had students call who had no idea that this was something that it was possible to do, and I think most of you probably know, but it's just important that folks at institutions understand this is a process that students can go through. And we have our first question. How exciting. Yes, in the back.
Hello, Lincoln with UT Austin. Got a question. I noticed that when we submit our CBM1, various times that we get different counts back and different students in those. At what point can we assume that the lists are finalized and we can use them?
Well, if you'll notice on those lists, I don't think I have a example here yet, but on top it'll say, semester credit hours through in, fall 2014 or whatever. So if you look at I believe it's the line right before it all starts printing out all the students, it'll say what up through what semester those CBM01s are, or the hours have been calculated for. Yes. If you look in the heading of somebody's going to prove me wrong here. And as Julie was saying before, I think the wording on the thing on the deal about the high school students is any hours taken prior to high school graduation will not be factored into our SCH database. So that makes it doubly important that y'all, for the dual credit students, that y'all tell us that those truly are dual credit hours, because that's the way we know. Okay.
And the good thing about having several speakers is if there's something you need to double check while I'm talking, we can do that too. So we'll get back any answers that we don't have. Yeah. Yes.
Questions? Okay. So now we're going to talk. We've got another funding limitation for doctoral students at the universities that do have doctoral programs, and so I don't have a date on it, but at some point the legislature put a limit of 99 doctoral funded semester credit hours on the doctoral students. That's the maximum they can take. They do have exceptions though, up to 130 hours, and those are given to us via the CBM OOE report. It's something like 1.5% of doctoral students can get this at your institution, can get this exception. Also, there are exceptions for certain programs that typically do exceed the 99 hour limit. I believe one of them is architecture, and there may be and there's several counseling or psychology programs as well that are going to be that go past that 99-hour limit. And again, we get 4 reports. We do a little bit better, or we're a little bit closer with these. We put doctoral students you report with 45 hours, then another with 75, so that gets them pretty close. And then the approaching the limit or within 15 hours. And then the last report is those doctoral students who have already exceeded the doctoral SCH limit. Yes?
I have 2 questions about this, and they're kind of related. One, we have a transitional master's to PhD program.
Okay.
And so for those students, and I want to make sure we're doing this correctly, until they actually stop out and get their master's, I'm reporting them as masters.
Yes.
Even though they're accumulating these hours also for their PhD. Okay.
That is what I understand that we've always said until, yes.
And then when I have a student who's in 2 separate programs, a PhD in dance and a master's in women's studies, if I can determine which hours are which, I put some in the doctoral funding category and some in the master's, and that's okay to do.
I think that's probably about the only thing you're going to be able to do, right?
Okay.
Please be as accurate as possible. Okay. And then here's just the CBM 01 report layout. Okay, now we're going to do the class report, which is closely tied to the CBM 01 student report. Again, reflects conditions as of the official census date, and only includes classes in coordinating board approved courses for resident credit, and doesn't matter whether the class is on or off campus. We collect information about the classes taught, semester credit hours, location, instructor, etc. And we produce enrollment by level, affected or not affected by the semester credit hour limit. Again, it's a census date report. The data is used in formula funding calculations. It's the main driver for the university formula funding. And it's used in the accountability system and any university reports where class information is required. Do you want to say something about it?
Oh, okay. Just a confirmation that you were correct in the last thing that you added, and I did want to see. Does everyone understand how the census date works? Obviously, those folks of you who've been around for a while do. I know we have a couple of new people, even people on our staff who are here. It's generally we're talking about beginning of semester reports, but I don't know if you want to just spend 1 minute explaining census date.
Right. So actually, there are two census dates. There's a census date for the semester, which is typically the 12th class day, or that's what the generally accepted date is, 12th class day. And then there's also a census date of each of the classes, and that can be found in the beginning of the CBMA 01 in the manual. 16-week classes are typically, I want to say, the 10th class day. Y'all know better than y'all should.
No, there's 12, 16 weeks.
It is 12th class day, okay.
Yeah.
So, and then shorter, gets fewer and fewer class dates for the census date. So any class whose census date falls before the 12th class day or on the 12th class day can be reported in that semester. And then we could go into flex entry if we want.
And I actually am going to talk about that during my presentation.
Oh, excellent. Well, I'll let y'all.
So we'll get to that.
Bated breath for the flex entry.
Exciting. But we did have a question come in when we asked you to send questions prior to the training about summer and the census date. And I believe it had to do with it's the 4th class day. Mm-hmm. Generally for summer, but this person was asking about, there's a little flexibility. Sometimes it might be a 5-week instead of a 6-week term, that sort of thing. Could you provide a little bit of guidance for looking at this summer in terms of the census date? And we can go back and I can go back and pull that question.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'd have to see all that.
We'll find that. I just want to make sure everyone understood that concept, because it is important for several things to understand the concept of census date. Okay.
Okay, well, and then we also have semester credit hour checks between the CBMA 01, the student report, and the class report, which is what seems to give people fits every semester. Universities, community colleges, doesn't matter, it gives them all fits. But just a high overview, the sum of the credit hours identified in 10A and 10B, which are the two SCH fields on there, for all students on the one, including the flex entry records, but take out the interinstitutional SCH, and then they must be within 100 hours of the total SCH for the class records, excluding interinstitutional as well, which are coded 1 in item 21. And
can I go back to census day?
Sure.
We have a long, drawn-out issue between 12th day and 20th day, and I don't know if anyone else goes through this, but one registrar we had wanted us to stop on 12th day, and our current registrar likes us to look at 20th day.
Because 20th day is when they can pay by, right? As the last day to pay. And
I really think that's a hangover from when you used to mail in your loan information and it took you 21 days to get information back, and it may not be such a big deal anymore, but it's still a big deal for us.
I mean, really, yeah, if they're paid and they're registered and all that, can I say this? I mean, if my feeling is if they're paid, they're registered and all that, I guess the question or the discussions I've had over the years with different people, Gary Johnstone was our person who really knew a lot about it. I think the last discussion I had with him was that, yeah, it's not if they go ahead and they pay on the 20th, they should be fine. Do you have a lot of students who are not there on the 12th class day that come on between the 13th and the 20th
No.
class days?
Well, we have a lot of students who write us a bad check.
Right.
And we don't find out until day
18.
11 sometimes, or then they come crawling back, or
Right.
or
Well,
whatever. I mean, it's always about non-payment.
Right. And I
It's
think-
never a new student coming in.
So-
it's a
so-
student who we got rid of because they didn't pay.
Right. So the discussion that we always had about that was basically our stance was going to be, if the student was there on the 12th class day and they got paid by the 20th, your last day of payment, then that was fine. Where we kind of had a problem. I don't want to answer her.
Well,
No, never.
we're laughing because Susan Brown is providing a little guidance here from our UTRGV, and apparently the 20th class day is in statute.
It is in statute.
Is what
Okay.
is in statute. Yes.
There you go.
So,
I was just going to say, though, when we had our discussions, I think the main sticking point for anybody was if the student was not in the class on the 12th class day and came in 2 weeks late or whatever, and then wanted to get into the class and then pay. That was where it was kind of getting kind of gray for us.
and I did find that other census date question,
Okay.
and I'm sorry I didn't remember it exactly before. So it's basically in the manual for the 004, it talks about the census date for summer sessions being the 4th class day. But then later on that page, and I can picture it in front of me, we lay out that depending on how long that semester is for that student, for example, for flex entry, here's how many days should be counted. So for summer, what about a summer session that isn't a traditional length? Should they be just using the 4th class day because that's what we've said in the manual for summer sessions, or should they be basing it on the length of the actual course in the summer and using our guidelines about shorter programs that we have for flex?
Whew.
Okay.
I think it's something maybe we need to talk about.
Okay.
Or I'm just not understanding the question totally.
I think the question is, in one place we say summer, and I don't know that we define summer as a certain length. We just say for the summer, it should be the 4th class day. And then later on, we define different lengths of courses and say, here's what day you should be using for a course that's this long or this long if it's flex, something that's 8 weeks that starts later in the semester. So I think we just need to go back to the manual and be clearer. And my sense now would be if it's a traditional summer class, you want to use the 4th class date makes sense. If you've got a 6-week session and you're using the 4th class date in summer 5 weeks, it could get very confusing to be adjusting it by half a day or whatever, depending on the weeks. So it makes sense to use that 4th day, unless you're doing something that's very out of the ordinary during a summer session and it's much longer than usual. And so the 4th class date just doesn't make sense. It's too soon, or vice versa. You've got some kind of week-long thing, which I don't know that anything's that quick, but maybe you've got something that's 3 weeks in the summer. So, but we can go back and look at the language in the manual and clarify that. And we also had, in terms of the 20th day, that is the point in time, I guess, when students get dropped if they haven't paid by the 20th day, which I believe we mentioned before. Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to the 1 and the 4 checks.
Sorry.
No problem.
We digress.
No problem. We digress, but it's okay. So the undergraduate students identified on the 1 that are affected by the undergraduate limit must be within 50 hours of the sum of the SCH calculated from the enrollments that are affected by undergraduate limit in items 18 and 19 on the 4. Again, excluding interinstitutional. As Julie mentioned earlier, I'm sure these are getting less and less. I know this was put in initially because people weren't reporting the students who were affected by the undergraduate limit, back in 1999 and 2000, and this was put in place, to make sure that those students were all reported on the 1 and the 4. And then we got the CBM 04 record layout. Again, address all year-to-year review items on your edit reports when you send in your certification request. Y'all are going to get tired of hearing me say that, but we really, really need y'all to do that. What's that?
Is that again?
Well, I'm sorry. I just said address all the year-to-year review items, and y'all are going to get tired of hearing me say that, but that's a very important thing for us. Most institutions do a really good job of it, but we do have a few that just say, yep, that's good.
And I would like to second that, because if we just have an institution or two that hasn't checked and we find something, we discover something a year later as we're running a report, or 3 months later, it's an awful lot of work to go through, thinking about recertification and whether that's going to be appropriate and how it's affected our statewide numbers, that we've got misreporting in there. It's just a really straightforward way that you can all help us to make sure the data is correct at the point of certification. So it is really critical that folks do those reviews. And I did want to mention, we found at the beginning of the manual that it does clearly explain on the university manual what the census date is for the summer class sessions. We just looked at it. So I'll be happy to, whoever sent that question in, if they want to call me, I'd be happy to provide that. Okay.
We have somebody with a question?
Yes. In case we have anyone in the room who's newer at this or fresher for those of us who are older at this, remind us how we know it's an interinstitutional student, because your verbiage you put up there, it said to be sure you put a 1 in item number or something another. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, I wish I had my manual. There were two ways. So did you want to know, okay, so you want to know, well, there's, for interinstitutional, either your students go to another institution or another institution's students come to yours. I hope I get this right since I'm not looking at anything. When a student of yours goes to another institution, you can still report that student on your CBMA 01 report for the head count, but you must list them as interinstitutional. For the other institution, which I believe we call the providing institution, they can list the student on their CBMA 04 report to generate SCH for formula funding, but they also have to be listed or reported as an interinstitutional student. That's the typical way to do it. There's a methodology too, where if you and the other institution get together and maybe you're providing classes for theirs and they're providing classes for yours, that you can count both, but it's in a written formal agreement, then that is fine. You can go ahead and list it that way as well. Did that kind of answer the question? With no microphone?
I have the manual up too, if that.
I guess as follow-up, just because I'm a little nervous about it. Okay. We've entered into the Texas Physics Consortium.
Okay.
And it's my understanding we don't have to mark those. Is that correct? And is that because of the specialness of the Texas Physics Consortium? I just don't want to later have to decertify or something.
Right. We don't want you to.
I'm nervous about it.
So I wonder if that's like is it VCT, is that what it's called on the community college side, the Virtual College of Texas, where your students can take classes at other institutions. Is that correct, how that works, the virtual college? Anybody?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So hopefully that's the way that is. We'll have to take a look at that. It's the physics. Let me write
I've
that.
got it. Texas Physics Consortium.
Texas Physics
We'll take a
Consortium.
look at that.
Okay.
Okay, another question?
Yes, I have a question. Doug, I know you're going to repeat this all throughout the day regarding the year-to-year review. I just need clarity in reference to every time there's a review on the edit summary, regardless of to the percentage, you want that review explained.
When it has the star review, yes, because we've built in a it's typically around 20 to 30% for each one of those. So, that's a pretty big percentage of something hopping up or going back down for a year. I know that some of them, things like non-disclosure, maybe even undeclared race, those will pop around, depending on, since it's kind of self-reported by the students. But, and you can just say that, students did that. But it really is, we really do like a second set of eyes on that, to make sure that what's been going on, that you really know. I mean, it may be great. Y'all may have just started a nursing program or something else that, really shot your nursing students up, and that's great. But we just want to make sure that there's not a problem somewhere that we're not seeing.
I'm from a community college. Should I wait later to ask this question? It's about interinstitutional.
Okay,
Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we've never done this before, but we're about to do it. And our question is, we are going to partner with the school that is outside of our district. So do you guys have any input on this in-district, out-of-district issue? Or should we charge these students that are doing this interinstitutional, they're going to be taking courses at our college, it's between us and Lone Star. Mm-hmm. So are there any state regulations about if we decide not to charge the students the out-of-district and charge them in-district, is that any kind of issue with the state?
I haven't heard of any. Have you?
I haven't, but I think that's one we'll want to take under consideration and talk to some other folks on staff about and see if.
I think you need to think about the students the students who are your students are paying you tuition. And the students who are somewhere else coming to you are paying at that other institution. So for us, like I'm at TWU and UNT. If a UNT student comes to us, they pay UNT tuition. So it's whether it's in or out or whatever, or whether they're at Texas Tech or whether they're at anywhere.
Well, that's
Texas.
So if they are a Lone Star, but they're actually Lone Star,
They should be taking the money. Yeah, they should be taking the Lone Star rate because they're getting their credentials from Lone Star. I mean, they're getting a grade from your professor, but they're getting their credentials from there. So that's how we do it. I mean, they pay us no money.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
So it makes sense that you just charge the tuition that you are charging for those
Right.
interinstitutional
Yeah,
students. I think that makes sense. Thank you, Grace.
On the originator. Oh.
We don't know. I was assuming if they just our instructors that it would be on our transcript.
Typically,
And that would be reporting it as interinstitutional. So somehow you guys would know it was, I don't know how you would know it was between us and Lone Star, but we would report it as being an interinstitutional because their student's going to come to our college and take a
Right. Typically, I thought the way it worked was your student went over there. Oops, I'm sorry. And then Lone Star would send back to you what the grade was and everything, and then you would put that on their transcript for your institution. Isn't that, Grace, isn't that the way y'all? Yep.
So it goes the other way. Okay, good. I like that better.
I had another question come in on the one that's a pretty straightforward, but I'll let you answer it, or I'm happy to do it. But I'm going to go back to that initial one. Okay, it's a question about reporting FTIC students that take summer school. If a student graduates high school in May 2015, enrolls in a community college for summer 2015, and then comes to our university in fall 2015, should we report that student as a first-time in college student on the fall CBM 001? The answer is yes. A student who has graduated from high school and does coursework in the summer, whether it's your institution or another institution, when they're enrolled in the fall, they are considered first time in college. Now, when we look at cohorts, for example, for graduation rates, we use an IPEDS definition, and we include students who are enrolled in the fall, who are enrolled with you at your institution in the summer. Even if you don't flag them as first time in college, though you're welcome to flag them in the fall again. But it's a little different situation if they've started at a community college and taken a course there and then come to you. It is very important that you capture those students as first time in college when they come to you that fall, because we want to have them in your cohort. You want to have that student who just graduated and they're going to be, a regular student at your institution moving through. You want them in your cohort for graduation rates for first time in college, and we want you to include them. So please be sure to capture those students as first time in college who have just graduated from high school in the fall, even if they did take a summer course elsewhere, for example, at a community college.
Question.
Yes.
So we're still reporting that student in the summer as first time in college and again in the fall as first time college. At the community,
The community college will not necessarily know that that student is going to be first time in college in the fall at a university. So it is acceptable for, in your mind, at the community college, that is a first time in college student who is coming to you in the summer. So you may report that student. That's how you should report them, their first time in college from your perspective.
Okay.
But if that student enrolls at a university in the fall, that student should be reported by the university as first time in college. Chances are that student is probably not coming to you full time in the summer. You know, when we look at graduation rates, generally we look at first time, full time, and we'll look at those students in the fall. We won't, if someone's just in the summer and they're not again with you in the fall, in terms of building those fall cohorts, that student who is at the community college who you reported first time in college, because we won't see them again in the fall, they won't be included in your regular fall first time in college cohort unless they still show up again. That make sense? Okay.
I just want to double check. For the community colleges, we report them in the summer as first time. We also report them again in the fall as first time.
Yes, and that's just
Okay.
fine. Yes.
Thank you.
That's just fine. But if they were with you in the summer and they're still with you in the fall, we will, when we build your first time in college cohorts to track those fall students, we'll pull them in. But it's totally acceptable for you to do it both times. And we had some of this come up with early college high school students who maybe continued through the summer at the community college where they'd been doing coursework. You know, it's very common with dual credit students to say, hey, I'm going to keep taking courses in the summer where I was doing my dual credit, and then they go on to a university or, in the fall. And we want to make sure that even if you have a transcript from that student, hey, they've already done coursework, we want to make sure you capture them as first time in college when they show up at the university in the fall in your class. Yeah. Good question. Okay. Well, we're going to...
We got one more.
Oh, we have another question? Yes.
I'm sorry, I just need a little clarification on that.
Sure.
If they started with, I'm from a community college, if they started in the summer
Yes.
with us and we report them as FDIC, are we required to report them again in the fall as FDIC? Or if we report them as continuing, you're going to recognize that they started with us and continued
Yes.
with us and still consider them
That's
FDIC?
correct. It's the same instructions for universities or community colleges in terms of someone who starts with you in the summer and then stays with you in the fall. As long as you capture them first time in college in the summer, they'll be included in your fall first time in college cohort. But you are welcome to report them both summer and fall, just if they're right out of high school, just if it's their first time in college, whether it's right out of high school or not, if it's their first time in college starting. What is different and what this question is about, and I don't want to confuse people, this is about if a student is taking a course at a community college in the summer, and then they're enrolling at a university or a different community college in the fall. And we want to make sure that first fall enrollment for that student who's just graduated from high school, that if they're just showing up new in the fall, that they're captured as first time in college. You shouldn't say, oh, they took a course in the summer at the local community college, I'm not going to report them. It's really important that they be captured as first time in college so we can include them in your graduation rate cohorts and all the other cohorts. Okay? Good. This might be something we could do a little more clarification on. I know it can get challenging. And this is the IPEDS definition. And in fact, the IPEDS definition for transfer students has been extended to include summer. And we did put some language, I believe, in the manual around that. And we can talk about that. But I think we'll move on now to if we're finished with the 1 and the 4. One more question. Yes.
I was asked to ask this again, even though I asked this a few weeks ago. There are no changes to the veterans reporting, even though there's change in the legislation? Federal?
Who did I ask about that?
Person in veterans?
Yeah, I can't remember, but no, there wasn't going to be any.
Okay. I was told to ask.
I know. Okay. So we'll go to the University Course Inventory Report, which is CBMO 03, which updates the University Course Inventory. Again, it allows institutions to add, delete, and modify courses on their official annual course inventory. It collects information about the courses, such as semester credit hours, level, and CIP code. Classes reported on the CBMO 04 and CBMO OS reports are verified against the university course inventory. This is an anytime report, so all you universities and anybody that was from university that was not in the summer TACRO session yesterday, we've opened that up. We're not going to make you just do your updates for fall in May, or just the supplementals whenever in the spring and in the winter, whenever. So you can just work on yours at any time. We're not going to restrict you. Again, the data is used in formula funding calculations. That's where we find the funding code and the course level to drive our formula funding calculations. And it's also used in the accountability system and any university reports, again, where the course information is required. Do I have anything about TCCNS on it? It also has the TCCNS numbers on the end of it, which are the Texas Common Course Numbering System. So we request, again, that anybody who's reporting your undergraduate lower class or courses, if there is a TCCNS equivalent or an academic course guide equivalent to that you put that on your inventory. We're starting to run a lot of what kind of reports on first college. It's not really first college level, right? It's developmental ed. I mean, actually, it's first college level.
We've actually been running a lot of reports related to tracking students who have done DevEd or not done DevEd into first college level courses, and also some studies related to the tests, some validation studies. So we've actually been looking at those course inventories and discovering there's some discrepancies. So it's important to make sure they're clear and make sure we get the TCCNS linkages so we know which courses are affiliated with those.
And there is a statute that also talks about that as well. Yes. Or a rule. I guess it's actually a statute.
Yeah,
right?
it's
and a rule.
Yeah,
one of our
rules. It's a requirement that those crosswalks be reported to us.
So y'all do.
And they do get used. Yes, I think it was.
We do use them quite a bit. Oh, yes.
I know you covered this yesterday, but can you talk about the deletion of courses if we want to do that in terms of the timeline for the new Anytime report, since there's a larger audience back home? And then two, are there going to be key dates that we should keep in mind since it's an Anytime report, so that if we want to have our data updated by such and such a date for a given semester that we should keep in mind?
Right. So I haven't had a chance to check on it yet, but it from what I was hearing from people, once the inventory has been rolled over, and we call it a rollover, and which we do on around February 1st, what we do is basically take your previous fiscal year's inventory, copy it, and put the next fiscal year on it. And that'll be around February 1st, so you should have all of your current deletions done by February 1, because it will not allow you to go back to the previous fiscal year once it's rolled over to delete any classes from that. So February 1 is the date that you want to have all your stuff done by before we roll it over. Why don't you come up here?
Sorry, I had one more question about the 1 and the 4.
Okay.
Actually, about the 1. This mostly is for our graduate students and also for our students in a health-related major and another major. We only report one major on the 001.
Right.
And traditionally, we've been juggling for the highest formula funded. Is that what we're supposed to be doing? I mean, does it come into play at all, or are we wasting our time?
Let's let Paul answer.
Paul's going to answer that.
Yay.
Speak. Hi, I'm Paul Turcott. I wasn't here for the introductions, but we don't use the one report in the formula funding. So regardless of which major you put on that, that's not going to affect your funding. Okay? Does that help?
Yes, it does, because I came to that realization doing the expenditure study for the last few years, thinking it's coming out of the credit hours, so why am I wasting my time juggling my students?
You came to a good conclusion.
Thank you.
Okay, why don't we keep going?
Yep. Okay, so we'll go to the graduation report. The CBM 09, again, reflects degrees conferred during the fiscal year immediately preceding the fall semester. Okay. The demographic data is collected for each of for the graduates, and the degrees must be in the institution's inventory of approved degrees to be reported. Enter a separate record for each degree a student is awarded in a reporting period, and a student with a double major may report the second major in item number 20 that was added a couple of years ago. Against an annual report due in the fall. This is used in the nursing shortage reduction program calculations, and it's used in the accountability system in any university reports where graduation information is required. So I kind of hope y'all are seeing the thing through here is that there's a lot of these reports are used in formula funding or nursing graduation or nursing shortage reduction programs. There's money attached to a lot of these reports. And there's the report layout. The admissions report, the B, this is only done by the universities, and it reflects who applies, admitted, and who is subsequently enrolled at an institution. Again, the demographic data is collected. Please only report degree-seeking students, and report the summer applications only for the fall and summer terms. On this report, undergraduate students identified as top 10% and 11 to 25% in item 14, admission action. That's where we get that data from in any of our reports. This is the only place we can get it from. Again, it's an annual report. It's used in the accountability system and any university reports where applicant information is required. There is a note on this. We've been looking through some of this data, and a number of institutions, that have not reported the father and mother's education level?
Yeah, I was asked to speak about reporting parental background to the Advise Texas group, and so I went and ran some data just to get a sense for what we were seeing reported. For the Apply Texas, not Advise, for the Apply Texas group. Folks, we're looking at this on the application, the Apply Texas application, where this information is collected, and so I went back to look on the B to see what was being reported by institutions for parental background, and there were several institutions that were reporting unknown for every student. So every student they reported on the B, they were reporting unknown. And so we were a little bit concerned about that. I think 40% of the students were being reported as unknown. And I know that there's a lot of interest. We understand that it's self-reported data. Usually you get it from the student application. Is that correct? From Apply Texas. There are a lot of researchers who are always interested in this particular piece of information. We understand it might not be as reliable as some because we have done some of this work to look to see what students have reported. But we would like you to do the best you can on this, and we'd prefer not to see institutions that are just choosing to report everyone as unknown, because that data is collected from students on the Apply Texas application. Now, one of the reasons I was asked to speak is I think they wanted to make the language and the definitions on Apply Texas align better with what we collect on the B, and I believe that has been done. So it is important for you to do the best you can with reporting this information. We understand that sometimes students just don't know, and that's fine. But certainly, I wouldn't think every student at an institution would be falling into an unknown category. So we appreciate your efforts to try to again report what you do know, what you have, the information you have collected on this.
And there's the layout. Again, address all year-to-year review items on your edit reports when you send in your certification request. So are there any questions on the 3, the 9, or the B reports, or any of the prior university reports? Way in the back there.
kind of goes back to the unknown on the CBM 01 for gender. If the student did not indicate on the Applied Texas gender, we keep getting an error for unknown. What are we supposed to do?
IPED says, and we follow IPEDs, to basically take all of your unknowns, and if your institution is 55% male and 45% female, if you can't figure it out by name or whatever, then just split the unknowns like that. Any others? Oh.
Hi. My initial question relates to self-supporting programs. We have a major program coming online this fall, and we're trying to, be sure we have a good handle on how this works across all of the reports, and specifically on the B. Do we report applicants to this program on the B, even though they're going to be excluded from the 1 and the 4 and so on?
I don't think so, right? If it's a degree, if they're degree seeking.
So these are the online.
Well, no, it's not an online. It's just a self-supported program.
So this actually is an on-the-ground program.
An on-the-ground self-supported program.
Right.
I think it would be fine to report them on the B, but I'll double check on that because I haven't had that question come up before. I will, while we're on the B, just quickly mention, I mentioned it at TACRO yesterday, that there was legislation which went through in this session where now students who are applicants, their data is to be considered the same as data for students who enrolled in terms of the FERPA protections. So it's probably important for all of you to understand that. For all applicants, their data is protected by state law in the same way that you would protect data for students who enroll through FERPA.
Okay. Now I have a second question. This circles back to the first time in college, but this is related to graduate level. Just kind of reviewing the definitions of the classifications. It talks about the doctoral, someone admitted to a doctoral program, but without 30 hours, they're supposed to be reported as master's level. So at what point do those doctoral students get reported as a first-time doctoral student?
I think really, so when you would report them or report them to us with a classification of 7 doctoral, or are you thinking that you need to put a 00001 in that program?
Well, it's kind of the interplay between both fields. Number one, if we're assuming that there will be multiple terms probably where we're reporting that student instead of the 7 or in our case 6. Most of ours are 6s.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes, 6.
Reporting them as 5s, master's level.
Right.
But however many terms it takes for them to finally accumulate the number of hours to report them fully as doctoral, then do we report in that semester? Is that when we can also report them as first time, even though they've been with us for several semesters?
I think you should just report them as first time accepted into the program whenever they are first accepted, even if it's at the master's level, and then they just transition on through. You don't have to I don't think you need to report them as first time accepted into a doctoral program at that point.
Okay, so then they look like first-time master's students.
Right, initially, but when we would go back, we're not, typically when we would do a study, we would look back to see the first time that they were actually classified as a doctoral student, right? Or is that...
yeah, generally I think you don't want to report someone twice as first time would be my sense, but and we do understand that there is that variability in the data with master's students and doctoral students. So we'll usually build in some checks when we're doing research, we're doing analysis on that data to see what students are classified as moving forward. And often we're looking at students who have graduated and looking back in time, so we'll capture them as doctoral graduates and then look back at patterns. But it's a good question, a good thing for us to be aware of. So we'll think that through and maybe talk to some of our data analysts about how they use the data to make sure we're capturing it most appropriately. And then I think we'll do one more question on this section, and then we'll move into the end, which I think will be of interest to everyone. Lincoln, is that?
Yeah, I have a question. I've heard that the SAT and ACT file structures are changing starting in September. Does that change the composite scores?
Yes, there's going to be. I had just heard that there's going to be a new SAT examination, and it's my understanding that they're making the writing optional. But generally, our composite scores don't include the writing component. Is that correct? We have never added that to the B. And I'll go in and check as Doug moves into the next section, but it's my understanding that you will still just be reporting the math and the critical reading. Now, whether they're called something different, we'll have to adjust the manual, and obviously there's going to be scaling differences and all that. But in terms of the reporting to us, we'll understand in this year the test changed. So I'll go and double check and make sure, but I'm pretty sure that we never moved into collecting the writing score, so that we will continue just to collect whatever's affiliated with reading, critical reading, whatever that's called, and the math portion. I think that it would make sense to continue to collect the composite. But thank you for bringing that up because it's not something we've really looked into. Good.
Okay, so we're going to do the N now. So basically it's used to identify students who have changed ID numbers during the time they were enrolled in an institution. That is used to link students longitudinally in our longitudinal studies. It's an anytime report. The main critical thing you need to know is once you report that, it's good for that year that you reported it, for that fiscal, or for that, it's not really a fiscal year, I guess it's a calendar year, and later. We won't take something reported in 2011 and go backwards to 2010 or 2009 in any of our studies to do that. I know there's a bit of a misnomer, and it was probably caused by us not changing the manual for so many years. Initially, I think the word got out that as soon as you drop that in, it would change all of our databases, change all the Social Security numbers everywhere, and that to a certain thing. And we just can't do that because we'd never be able to match a report from one year to the next if we were to start doing that. So, let's see. Then the report layout and questions.
And obviously, at the end, we're just going to. I think we're just talking about the end once. So this does apply to community colleges. So we're moving into that area of reports that do apply to both institution types, or all three, I should say, we're happy to have here with us today. Okay. Any questions about the end? And you did talk about the December 31st date, how important that is. Yeah, question on the end.
One question about the end. So you said you use it for longitudinal, but you don't go backwards, so I kind of don't understand how it's longitudinal. But it does, can it not, for the current semester, though, go correct what you've submitted? Because we've even had problems where we can't get the S, the E, and the 2 to jive because people are always submitting like a correction for a Social Security number. And it seems like we've had answers back that even though we've submitted an N, that it can't apply to those simultaneous reports, and I guess that's just real complicated on our end.
From our end, we would say so the S, the E1, and the 2 are all end of semester reports. You're reporting them, after the semester finishes. So why isn't that change, populated throughout all three of those reports? I think I know the answer that, that maybe the E1 will come in right after the end of the semester, and then the 2 might show up 3 or 4 weeks later, and the S might show up a month later. But it seems like you could rerun all those reports and get them in sync. Is your system not allowing you to do that?
It's not that, but like within the responsibility in our office, the person who's the TSI guru does the 002, and sometimes like if a patch, for lack of a better word, for your software system comes in at a different timing and you've already gotten the S and the E pretty clean, and we just get in a never-ending going back through. So it just seems like if at least the N could update the current semester, because students turn in changing data all the time, and so it's not like locked to where it wouldn't change while we're still working on a end of semester report. And there's just so many hands in the data. I don't even know how larger institutions manage it because we're a smaller one, but that's just... There's no way to make sure that every one of us working on a report runs it at the exact same time and doesn't have a time lag. It's real hard.
I think it would be really, really hard for us to do that here.
Okay.
I'm sorry. My former boss said it would.
It would be a challenge.
Said it would be a challenge.
Yeah, I just don't think that's something. And I was listening to that too, thinking it's already.
Maybe
complicated,
right.
In terms of working with trying to do those matches. So it would just not be something that would be feasible.
Well, not really. I mean, if we're talking about doing something like this, I would suggest that maybe at your institution you put a moratorium on. I know, but you ask me to do something crazy, I'll ask y'all to do something crazy. Right? But if you could say, this is really tough, but I know it's hard out there because y'all have got things, spread out.
Yeah.
But I just really can't see us doing that. Another question.
Okay, we were new to state reporting, and this was the report that we knew the least about.
Okay.
So for the N, it's an anytime report, but when you say anytime, can it be run? Are there specific periods or reporting cycles that it should be run, like after every end of term report?
Well, there's some institutions that I've talked to that just do it every month.
Okay.
And then some will just have a certain time. I guess they'll just run it once a year and just give us a big block of them.
Yeah, and if you're going to do it once a year, December 31st, when we get into our accountability season, when we're running a lot of our analyses to post in our accountability system, we really need, so if we're running our graduation rates, a lot of the data gets calculated and produced in December, January. So we have told institutions, and I believe it's December 31st, that is the date where if you're going to pick a date where you have to make sure your S is up to date, that is the one to focus on. Because then our analysts, if they're running, say, a graduation rate or a persistence rate, any cohort-based data where they're grabbing a student and seeing if they can track them forward, they will have that N, and they will be able to find that student under the other SSN or the other ID that's affiliated with it. And I think people understand, and new people might not, that when we have a student, what you report to us is what we have in our data file. So if you report a student to us with an incorrect SSN, the OON does not go back into all that data that you reported to us. It does not do this. It does not go back and change that to what you've given us. What we do is we take what you've given us and we create a special ID code, a special key, where we're able to then match what you've given us back in time and track that student. But it's not something where we hit a button and we change your data, because we need to know what you report to us, and that's in the best interest of institutions as well as us to be able to say, this is exactly what you reported to us on this report at this point in time. So what the N does is just allows us a means, gives us the information to be able to go back and try to capture that student who's been reported with one or more different IDs, whether incorrect or not, over time. So really that December 31st date is a key one, because that is when we run a lot of our measures and we want to be able to capture students. But a good example for when we talk about it, it's useful for longitudinal data, of course, when we're tracking cohorts. But what we don't do is we don't go back to, for example, a graduation rate that we ran 4 years ago and suddenly say, oh, your graduation rate for your 2006 to 2012 cohort is now going to change because you told us in 2014 that you had an SSN that you hadn't captured correctly. That 2006 graduation rate we base it on the data that we had available maybe when we ran it in 2012, 2013, at that point in time. But, for example, if we decided to run a 10-year graduation rate from 2006 to 16, and you had in 2014 given us, hey, we found out more about the student, we're giving you the N, we're actually going to tell you we had an ID wrong or something, that's new data, that's a new cohort that we're running from that point in time, and then that student would be included. So I hope that helps to explain it that way. But we're not going to go back and say, well, you gave us an N in 2014, so some of this data that we ran years ago is now going to change. We need our data to be consistent, and we want to, continue with that process, or we would constantly be having numbers change, and it would be very confusing for everyone. Yes?
So it's used, the OON would be used for graduation rate calculations that would take that student in, but it's not used for excess hours, is that correct?
With the excess hours, I think the problem we were looking at was that if the student, different institutions, let me double check on that. We couldn't do it for sure for anything but what looked like a true SSN. Because a number of institutions may use the same ID number.
We've had another question come in, and then I think we want to move forward. We receive a mismatch when the end-of-term SSN numbers don't match the census reports, the 1 and the 4. We expect the submission, I think this goes back to what we had before, we expect the submission of the N to correct this mismatch, but the reconciliation does not occur. We have to change socials on the end-of-term reports back to the previous SSN to make the report clean. Please comment on this. And that might be one where we need to...
I'm going to kind of take it as kind of like the last question.
That's what I thought. It's very similar to the last one that we aren't able to...
Yeah, we just can't do that.
Right. So you're doing work on your end to try to, that's what it sounds like, that they're making some effort to do that. Okay. But it's good. This has been very helpful. It's good for us to hear the issues that you're working with. Some of the new people are probably thinking, this is very complicated. It is. And it can be. There's no question about it. So I think we'll now, if we don't have anything else on the N, we're going to let Paul Turcotte talk.
Hold on, I got my picture.
Oh, you've got a picture. I'm sorry. There you go.
So this is just kind of going in. We're going to go into these end of semester reports, just had this we just made this picture up a couple of years ago, just to show the interrelationship between the 4 end of semester reports. Basically everything hits against the S. The different things there are what checks between them. Those are the key fields that it's looking for when it does look between them, and it just makes it just makes it a little more understandable as to how all these interrelate.
No, I think that's very helpful. And we're going to start with the CBM 008 end of semester report, and we're very pleased that Paul Turcotte has joined us. He is the person in the agency who uses this report more than any other. He has to generate several reports from the data that you provide to us, and I know we've had lots of requests for training on the 8. So we're going to hand it over to Paul and let him explain to you how the 008 works, at least from his perspective.
Thanks, Julie, and thank you all for coming in today and talking about this. Just a quick poll. How many people find the CBM 008 confusing? Raise your hand. Less people than I thought. That's good. That's encouraging. How many people are tired of getting emails from me after you clear your edit report saying, something doesn't look right? No? That's good. We're close to getting the fall 2014 CBM 004 CBM 008 reports done and in, so that's good. Maybe you advance the slide? Oh, right. Control and everything. Okay. So what are we doing with the CBM 008? This faculty salary report is where we collect the information for each faculty member. The key ID on the report is not the faculty member, but it's the faculty member and the course they've taught. So it reflects employees of the institution who are paid a salary or receive benefits associated with the institution and who have any type of faculty appointment regardless of the source of funds of their assignment during the year. Faculty demographic data is collected. Salary and appointment percentages are collected. This is a semester report, and this data is used in the accountability system and any HRI reports where the faculty information is required. I'm going to hit the wrong button here, I know it. I did well. So the question you always have to ask yourself is, how are we using the data that you're providing us? It is good to know that we are actually using it, because I realize it's a lot of work getting it to us. One of the things we use it for is the average budgeted faculty salaries, and this probably raises the most questions, so that's why I put it first. We're doing some things with the data that you give us that makes it a little bit difficult once we put that report out there for you to say, hey, this doesn't look exactly like the number that I gave them. And the first reason why is we take your fall number and we double it so that it represents a full year salary. That in itself causes problems if the fall and the spring semester for a particular faculty member aren't identical. And that does occasionally happen, but I think for the most case, it isn't the case. They're fairly even semesters. So doubling it fairly well represents a full year salary. Then we convert that to an FTE, and this is the part that I get a lot of questions about. We take that percent of time value that you give us, and we use that as the denominator for the salary. And what it does is it takes, say, a half-time employee and doubles that salary again. So now you may have given me a $10,000 salary. It's now $40,000 for that person because they were half-time, and that can lose a lot of folks, and it can cause some interesting numbers. And we'll talk about that in a few minutes. The last thing we do is we average that by the university or the college. These results are posted both on our faculty salary website. I don't know if you've seen that. We have a page just for that with all of the reports, and it's also included in the accountability system. The next thing we use it for, which is probably more important because it relates to money, the general academic institutions use it for their expenditure study. They use it as a cost driver for faculty salaries in itself. And so the weights that are used in the general academic instruction and operation formula, they're based partially on the numbers that you're reporting to us for faculty salaries on the faculty salary report. Last thing, again, we use it in the accountability system for a variety of things, which I've listed there, but I won't go through. Okay, so these emails that I send out, some common issues. Really, they're grouped into two common issues. One is duplicate faculty. Several key fields on the faculty salary report have to be identical. Again, what I told you before we introduced the S, faculty members were reported one time on the faculty salary report. That was the key ID was their ID. That's not the case anymore now. We duplicate the faculty member for every course they teach. So an instructor teaching 3 courses would be listed on the fall faculty salary report 3 times. When we do our reports, we actually aggregate that together or deduplicate it. And so fields are items number 1 through 23, except for the flex entry items 15 through 17. Those have to be identical. If they're not, What happens is one faculty member might look like 3, and that's going to throw off our faculty counts and our full-time equivalent summaries. All right. And so the next thing that falls into case is we have a disproportionate change in the percent of time or compared to the salary. This happens a lot when faculty members maybe change from full-time to part-time, part-time to full-time, or some other various things that will occur. Maybe they get promoted and they get a larger salary, but it doesn't change their rank on this report. Or pick up additional duties which fall into the scope of this report and yet they don't change rank. That can create some questions. Oftentimes, though, what it is the percent of time or the salary have an error in them. And so we don't really pick on every faculty member when we're looking at this. We really look at it in the aggregate, and when we see something wild in the aggregate number in that institution average by rank, then we'll call you up and say, hey, something doesn't look right. But before I do that, I'll generally go into the data and see if you've got any faculty members that have 1,000% change in their average FTE salaries. And so I'll send those back to you saying, hey, you might want to look at these and see if that's a reality. Any questions on that particular common issue? All right. Well, it's good to hear. I think I have to give up the trigger then.
Rose Brill, St. Philip's College, San Antonio. I do have a question on the calculation of the average of the faculty salary. Did you state that that was calculated in fall and spring? And does that include overloads or just the base salary?
Okay, so for the average budgeted salary, we only use the fall report for that. We don't use the spring or the summer. And the overload salary is not included in that number that we're using for the report.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, another question?
We've kind of been going around and around on who to include on the report. So it says anybody with a faculty appointment, I think, or a title. Would that include administrators, like a president who has a faculty appointment? And if so, do we put them down with their entire salary with the 0%, or a zero salary with 100%, or don't put them on at all? If we put them on, will the very count influence the number of faculty that's showing on your faculty reports? Just talk about that a little bit.
You bet. That's a good question. We get this quite often. The answer to all 3 questions is yes. You do want to include them if they have an instruction component. It definitely you definitely want to include what they're actually being paid, and it absolutely skews the average. There's no way around it. It's we're mimicking something that is done by a number of national organizations for this particular metric, and so we want to stay consistent with that. They include those, and so we also include them in ours. It's almost always when I'm wrong and you're right on these weird percentages, it's almost always a president or a high-level faculty or high-level administrator teaching a course, one course for a very small percentage of their time. No, you don't put them on if they don't have an instruction component.
Okay. Oh, another question on the 8. No, that's fine. That's what we're here for.
So I have a question in reference to the SPAN FE for spring. When spring SPAN FE is completed, we can't count it the regular spring term. When do we count those courses on the 8? Are we counting them in the summer?
So these are going to be your flex entry courses that
Correct.
start at the beginning of a semester, but then they span into a later semester, Paul.
Right.
And I don't know how that works on the 8.
I believe they're supposed to match what you're doing with the S report.
Right,
if
so
you're-
they would be reported in the later semester, correct? Everyone's nodding. And the later semester, so the semester where you're reporting them as flex on the S, and also they would be coming in on the 1 in a later semester, right? So if it's let's do an example. So a course starts in the beginning before the census date. It starts in fall. Say a course started in fall 14, and it completes in April of 15. So when you are reporting that course for that faculty member, it's going to be a span. It's going to come in on the S in spring of 15, right? Because that's when the course concluded. That's when you knew the full information. Is that correct? And then that is when and also on the other end of semester reports, because the course is finished and you can let us know. And in terms of when the course started, we can, and what I will recommend, because we're going to talk about flex, is that we have a flex entry table in Appendix P, which it shows for those spanned flex entries how to think about them. And this is not just for the 8, but overall, sort of when to report on the different reports. I don't know if we've included the 8 on that. I'll look, because I think we could include the 8 on those examples. And I'll go ahead, and I think, Doug, you've got a copy of the manual. Can you, if you've got Appendix P, we'll take a look. And I think that would be helpful. Yes, and we have a question here.
The problem is we don't have a CBM 8 in summer.
Okay.
So the SPAN FE from spring term that ends in summer,
right.
There's no 8 to put it on. And the appendix
That's
that
what the
you're
question
talking-
is. Thank you. I'm glad we got to what that's all about. So you don't have yep, that's very good. So we have to figure out instructions for you when something is spanning into the summer because you don't have an 8. So thank you. We'll take that back and we'll provide you with instruction, and we can add an example to our flex entry table that takes into account the 008. Yes, another question.
Okay, I'm sorry, but in other words, what I just heard you say, I think, is nobody who doesn't teach a course should appear on the 8?
I think that's correct. I don't think we put non-teaching.
Okay.
I'll always defer to Lincoln Holmes.
Yeah. So you're talking about someone who is being paid as a faculty member, but they are not teaching a course in that given semester, but they are paid as a faculty member, and they are included, and everyone's nodding. Those faculty members are included on the CBM 008. So this might be someone who's doing research. Yes, we have a.
So people who typically they will have a rank, faculty rank.
Right. This is not the president who is not teaching. It
could be.
The president would be reported. If the president is someone who's teaching a course, the president would be reported. But generally, it's probably not. The president is not going to be included as someone who's going to be a faculty member. Even if they have a faculty rank, they're not going to be.
Okay. So if they have a faculty rank, but they're only administrator duties, current
Right.
assignment.
And I'm gonna
deans, directors, whatever kinds of things. But they're not teaching. They will not be on the report at all.
That's always been my understanding, that those folks aren't on the report. But Doug, we're going to let Doug Parker pick it up from here because I am not an expert on the 8. Yes.
I can read it for you.
Okay, Doug's going to read it to you how we characterize it.
We've read that a few times.
Collect data for any on the academic duties and services of each person who has any type of faculty appointment, regardless of their source of funds or assignment. Include research faculty, librarians, administrators, if they have faculty titles, and faculty who may be on paid leave.
Okay, so it would include administrators with faculty titles. Thank you. And I think, Paul, you probably don't use that data because we're not getting.
It's a little deeper than I have to dive.
No, you don't have to dive that deep because you're just looking at those who are teaching for the reports that you have to produce. So we apologize for the confusion on that. Okay, yes.
If you have a faculty that you're reporting that is not tied to a course, how is that reported on the report, and how does that not error out?
You won't get an error if there's not a course associated with it. I do know that I see entries with no courses.
Yeah, so just don't associate any course with that faculty member you're reporting. Yes?
Yes, the question was, is it possible that the structure of the CBMAA report is different for universities and community colleges? The answer is yes. We have a different set of slides for that.
Yeah, so we're going to go into the 8 for community colleges in a few minutes. So why don't we...
Does that cause some relief?
Oh, you were getting a little nervous there. Those from community colleges. Yeah, no, there are, and I think you see on the agenda that the 8 shows up twice. And we wanted to cover the 8 first for universities. Now we're going to move. I'm just going to talk about the S once. So we were just talking about the N once, and I might have added to that confusion when we moved to the N and I said we're just going to discuss it once. But we will talk about the 8 for community colleges in a few minutes. I've just moved because I just want to keep you all awake. I know this is riveting, exciting information, and all this new research about sitting is telling me every once in a while I need to stand up. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the CBM OOS, and if I do need to move back to get support, I will do that. But I do spend a lot of time working with CBM OOS and CBM 002 data, so those are the 2 reports that I'll be discussing today. And in terms of time, I will try to keep it as brief as possible so we have room for your questions.
Hey, Julie, are you on the 2 or the S?
I'm on the S showed up on the schedule. That's what I thought I'd start with the 2, and then I saw the S is what's included on the schedule. So if we get the 2 up here, oh, we've got the 2 here. Okay, yeah, we need to jump into the S. Sorry, here I have the S. Okay. First of all, I want to thank all of you for all of the hard work you did several years ago when this report was introduced. We told you at the time it was going to be useful for all kinds of things, for all kinds of data analysis and work that we do at the coordinating board and work that researchers do. And it absolutely, we're starting to see that happen now that we have 4 years or almost 4 years worth of data. The CBM OOS report is our student schedule report, and you might want to think about it like a transcript level report. It has information about what courses a student is taking, how the student performed in those courses. So it's kind of, for those of you who knew, a combination. On the 1, we get information about the student. On the 4, we get information about the courses. On the S, we get record level information for the student in the course. So we have a record for every course a student takes. And this has been wonderful information to have in terms of the type of analysis that we want to be able to do as a state, whether it's tracking students from K-12 to higher ed and into workforce, or for just higher ed type analyses of what students are doing in their coursework. So thank you all for your help with that. We did have a grant from the federal government, the state longitudinal data system grant, and I know there were some funds provided to institutions to help with that. It is an end of semester report. Oh, no. I guess I can do this from here. It is an end of semester report, and it does match to the CBM OE1, and Doug showed you the illustration of the match. One thing I want to say about the S, and when I get to the CBM 002, which is the Texas Success Initiative report, it's really important to read the materials in the introduction of the manual. So for every report, there's a little introductory section, and then there are the instructions. Well, those introductions are important, especially for the S and the 2. I think I counted for the 2, we've got about 13 pages of introductory materials. But those things are really important as you're trying to understand these reports. So don't forget that that's part of the process of understanding what to report, is to read those introductory sections. The S, there are some differences in the S across community colleges and universities, and most of these differences have to do with differences we see on the 1, or we'll see on the OE1, and that's reporting for the class part of it, whether it's contact hours or semester credit hours related to funding. So we do have some additional items on the CTCS related to that. The classification options, of course, are different across universities and community colleges. So there are differences, but the The items I'm going to focus on today are the ones that are similar, because I think we've already talked through some of the issues with reporting semester credit hours. But what I will say, it is very important that you report semester credit hours to us in the decimal places that we've provided, and that becomes important when we talk about non-course-based option for developmental education. So I am going to start with item 18 on the universities and item 21 on the community technical college. This is an item where institutions need to provide to us the high school credit status for every student. And we have collected information about dual credit student for years, and that's on the CBM 001, where we have a field where you tell if the hours a student has earned on the one, how many hours they earned as a high school student for high school and college credit. So we have that information on the one. Now we're collecting information on the S about high school credit status. In some cases, from some institutions, it doesn't match up. And we actually did a very deep dive into this in the last couple of weeks when I knew the training was coming. We would expect them to not be exactly the same, because you can have students on the one who are starting before the census date, and then you might have some kind of a flex type dual credit program happening where it's starting after this census date and it's going to come to us on the S but not come to us on the one. So we expect some slight differences between what's reported for students in terms of their contact hours on the one and what's reported for students on the S, for students who are identified in this item as dual credit students, what's reported for their hours, but we don't expect huge differences. And we do have some institutions, I've talked to some folks already, but we did have several institutions where we checked this where there were some really big differences. And we shouldn't be seeing that. If you're telling someone is dual credit on the one, you need to be reporting them on the S under this item as a high school student. So just wanted to make sure everybody understood that that's important. You know, most of your students are going to be coded 0, not a high school student. But if you have high school students, you need to give us that 1 or 2 code, and it'll be important that aligns. We have more and more dual credit. We're doing lots of research on these students. We want to get the best understand we can. Now, we have been told by some institutions sometimes it's hard to tell if a high school student is taking a course for dual credit or not for dual credit, and we've always said do the best you can on this one. So those code 1s or code 2, you know, sometimes you'll have a student who you won't realize they're actually doing it for high school credit. They didn't let you know. So do the best you can, but do try to, the most important thing is differentiating those students who are in high school from those who aren't.
Julie?
Yes, question.
I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying. You're comparing the S for, say, the spring term to the CBM 1 for spring term?
Yeah, so what we did for this particular exercise is we looked at all the students who were reported to us, and I think we looked at fall, on the one with that dual credit high school hours. And we're able to tell from the hours, if we unduplicate, we can tell how many students are reported. And that's typically the data we've used over all the years to report out on dual credit enrollments. But now that we're getting this dual credit information on the S, I thought, well, we need to start using the S more for dual credit, and want to make sure institutions are capturing students on both if they're in fact enrolled for the whole semester. And what we were finding is for some institutions, for some it was an exact, and for many it was a very close match between the number of students being reported as high school students on the one and those being reported as high school students on the S. And then, of course, we were able to figure out the hours reported on the S versus on the one, and there was a very close match. But we did have some institutions where there was a big difference, and unless all of the dual credit is starting as flex or something like that, and we'll dig a little deeper, but it seems to be that there might be some reporting issues there.
My concern is that with our dual credit, students, their start and end dates do not mirror our college start and end dates.
Okay.
So they're all span FE, so they get reported in the next term.
And that's exactly what we need to know when we start looking at this data, and we'll get in touch with institutions. That's very helpful to know that this is not a report. It's probably not a reporting error. It's something to do with how the dual credit is structured. And as we try to understand dual credit better, we'll be going in to look at that. So I will contact the institutions that had some issues, and we'll try to get to the bottom of it. But I did want to stress that it is important that you understand we've got items on the one and items on the S related to dual credit students. And, you know, if your dual credit is traditional in terms of semesters, they should look pretty much the same to us when they're reported. But thank you. Okay. This is an item on the S about developmental education, the developmental education course intervention level. And this was an item where we had a change just this past fall. And when you look in the manual, you can still see items 2 and 3 and 5 and 6. That's where in the past you reported the DevEd level to us. Well, it's not a level anymore. We are now, and in fact, we probably need to change the title, but now what we are asking institutions to report, now that we have all kinds of new initiatives happening with developmental education, no longer is it pretty much the standard that students take a course and it's either the lowest level, the medium level, either they're in intermediate algebra and they're in introductory algebra and they're in some kind of fundamental math. Now we have a lot more variety in terms of the type of developmental education we're seeing. So we have changed this item to better reflect what the current landscape is in terms of developmental education. So now you just need to report to us if it's not developmental education, that's easy, but if it's a developmental course, if it's a developmental ed intervention, those are going to be those NCBOs that are non-traditional. If it's some kind of a self-paced course or intervention, a lot of people are doing this. The Emporium models, there's a whole lot of folks doing that. Some in large malls. Actually, I'm joking, but Austin Community College actually took over a mall that's just down the street here, and it's a math emporium now. And we also are seeing a lot of co-requisite models, and this is happening in a lot of states. And I know the folks who, we're part of a consortium where we report data. It's called Complete College America, and they've said, oh, we're thrilled that you're actually collecting this co-requisite information now because there's a lot of interest in this type of intervention because I think in these types of courses because they've shown a lot of promise. So we are now collecting the data just this way. So moving forward, you need to make sure you understand this item. The one piece, and I know Jana always points out to me that in reporting these items, it should be reverse priority. So you may have something that's a course, but it's a co-requisite course. It should be reported as 8 and not reported as 1 in terms of developmental education. So kind of go backwards in terms of, well, what if what I'm doing falls into 2 different categories? It's got a self-paced component, but it's a co-requisite. The student's doing it with a college math course. That's where just go backwards and use that for priority. The other thing we're asking you to do, and I think I'd like to find out if this has been challenging, is we're asking you, if it is a co-requisite model, to tell us on item 8, if the record that you're reporting is for a student who is in a college level course that is paired with DE. So for example, if you have a student who's in one of these paired courses and you're telling us this record I'm giving you now on the S is for college algebra, but this record for college algebra, so you're going to be reporting the course code for that, all the information for this college algebra course the student has taken, their grade in college algebra, etc. But that college algebra course is part of a pairing with a developmental education course or intervention. We want you not to tell us 0 here, it's not a DevEd course. We want you, if possible, to give us an 8 code. So if we go back to say, okay, what are these pairings? What DevEd courses are being paired with what college courses? This is the way we can do that. This is why we added that. And I have heard feedback from Jana and some other folks who are working with this data that some people have said this can be a challenge, especially if the college level course is half full with students who aren't part of a paired course, and the other half of the students are part of a paired course. So do we have anyone had that experience? Well, let me know if you do, and I'm hopefully now you all understand that item. It's actually very important. There's a lot of interest in that area. Our first college level course item is where you tell us if a student has successfully completed a first college level course, and this is with an A, B, or C. I didn't include all the information here, but this is another item that's very important, especially for community colleges, because it is tied to success points. And we use this item to help calculate those. And for those of you who aren't aware, there are some voluntary guidelines related to first college level courses that were developed by a task force that came to the coordinating board. Pretty much, I think almost all the institutions in the state were represented. They did a lot of good work. So if your institution is struggling with what courses should fall under that first college level course umbrella, there's guidelines available. And they're in the manual in Appendix Q. Okay. Course grades. This is at the core of the CBM OOS, and we have, I cannot tell you how many analyses, especially during this past legislative session, we did using course grades, because there's a lot of interest in how students are performing. Different types of students, tracking students across courses. It's been used several different ways. It's really valuable. Some things that are important to remember are that, for example, option 9, code 9, is for DevEd students only. We have seen some doctoral students working on their dissertations reported with E for effort or in progress. Now, at your institution, you might call someone who's working on their, well, I know it's a lot of effort because I did it. I would have enjoyed an E for effort. And in progress, I know, can last a long time, and that might be, in progress might be the term that you use at your university for doctoral students who are working on their dissertations, but it's not appropriate for a course grade. You would just provide us with an incomplete for that student if it's dissertation hours and they're moving forward. And generally I know they're not graded. So that E for effort in progress is something mostly community colleges use for DevEd. They asked us to include it. We did add an option for if the instructor didn't provide a grade. But the next slide has to do with the point value of the grade, and it's really important with the point value that if you have a student who is taking a course pass-fail, so to go back to the grades, that's going to be the C for example, 8 credit or passed, or no credit did not pass, which is different than an F. That should not be included in the point value, because you don't have a way to assign a point value to a gut credit, like pass out of pass-fail. We don't want you guessing everyone got a B. That just needs to be left off. The grade points that we receive we use them for different purposes. If we calculate some kind of grade point average in part of research, we understand it's not the same one you're going to have. That, you may or may not include courses a student took at a prior institution. You're going to have your own definitions and own protocols for how you do GPA. But for our purposes, we only want a grade point if the course was actually graded. So withdrawals, we shouldn't see anything there, etc. And I think we do have some edit checks built in for that. So back to the grade point value. This is different than we used to do it. It's just very important that you recognize that this is we've got the decimal places built in. So a 3.8 should not go in as a 38. It should go in as a 380. And sometimes we see data, and we do have edit checks in the ranges, and they will kick in sometimes. So I think generally institutions do a good job with that. Now, non-course-based options. This is something that I could do a whole 3-hour presentation on, and I have spent over an hour, doing presentations at TACRO and TARE on non-course-based options. We are happy to help you with this. In terms of recording non-course-based options, and these are developmental education options, it's really important that you get them right in terms of what you're reporting for the semester credit hours, and you have the ability to report them in decimal places. So please do that as appropriate. Also, we have, because you can have a non-course based option that's a quarter of a semester credit hour. You can report that to us as 0.25 if that's in fact what you're doing. That's 4 contact hours long. We had a question come in this week. Someone wanted to know what happens with these non-course based options that just keep going and going and going. Was my sense of the question. It is very important that for non-course based option, they are still structured and reported to us. The system is set up to report courses, and I put that in quotes. So we want to make sure we don't have a situation where a student is covering the same material semester after semester after semester and they're not mastering it. We don't want a situation where the institution is funded semester after semester after semester when really it's that the student isn't mastering the material. So when you're working on reporting to us something where it's self-paced, you still have to tell us, you still have to affiliate semester credit hours or contact hours, and it still should be based on the course material that should be covered. So if the student isn't able to cover that course material, then the course should not be reported to us again for funding. But if you're doing something self-paced, it should be designed and structured so that the first part is set up in the first semester. Then the student might move into the second set of material to be covered in the second semester. I know these non-course based options can be really challenging. I don't want to spend too much time, but hopefully that helps a little. Yes?
The student is not a course structure.
Right.
Because that takes a few hours, and then I have to set up a course after the fact. I can't really.
Okay, setting up a course after the fact is I think a challenging thing to do, because you should be able to know that you're enrolling a student into a program.
It's kind of a lab setting, though.
Right. And even in a lab setting, what we've talked about, and again, this can be challenging, but you need to think about, okay, am I enrolling the student? For example, you might have some kind of diagnostic information on this student, and you might know this is the material that needs to be covered for this student in the lab setting in the self-paced, and that's about 1 semester credit hours worth of DE material. Say they understand, 2/3 of what is normally covered. I'm going to compare it to a traditional, say, a intermediate algebra DE course. So say you have a diagnostic that says this student really just needs a small piece of that material. So you could think about, all right, a student who just missed 3 or 4 modules, we can enroll them in we'll set up a 1 semester credit hour course and enroll this student in that, so that they can do their material. And we've allowed you some flexibility, so maybe they're missing 3 modules, maybe they're missing 5, 3 pieces. Maybe you have a student who's missing almost all of it, and you decide, well, that would be the 3 semester credit hour intervention that we would enroll them in, or the 1.5 semester, So if you can think about it that way, we know we don't want every single student reported in a separate class. That's going to be too hard for everyone, and I don't think people are doing that. But you're doing that, okay. And that's not the way we've thought about and I don't think it's the way you should think about the.
There's plenty of students who've
sense.
had that the course isn't set up beforehand. They're coming into like a lab setting.
Okay.
They're not even getting enough hours for me to report them. They're not on the 4 to 8 semester credit hours crosswalk.
So these are students who have been required to do DE because they didn't meet the TSI standard, but they're just not showing up to do the work. Is that what you're saying? They're not.
They're allowed to go in and out,
Right.
and they keep track of their clock hours, their
Right.
minutes, and they're just not there long enough, or maybe they get out and pass it and they're okay from that point, but they're not there long enough for me to report.
Okay, well, if they're out and they pass it, and this is something that we've talked a lot about with those non-course based option, that if you have a student who is able to cover the material in a condensed amount of time, you still had to think about that in terms of material, that here's the amount of material that we want this student to be able to cover. So maybe they do it in a shorter amount of time than you expected, but they cover the material. Then you can think about putting that student in, here's the section, or whatever you want to call it, the NCBO, that covers this amount of material. And it is challenging because obviously we don't want everyone put in a 3 semester credit hour intervention and they're all getting through in one day. That doesn't make sense in terms of funding, in terms of what they're doing. So we understand that this is challenging, but then you have to think about, did we have the correct diagnostic information? Was this useful? So I think let's continue this conversation, because I'll continue to go to conferences and try to collect information. Our depth survey, we're trying to collect information about what people are doing, how they're doing it for reporting, because we know those NCBOs are challenging. But that's the first I've heard of reporting it after the fact, and it's really not what has been intended. For example, what would you report on the one that's coming at, that's a census date report? You don't know yet how much time the student's going to take if you're reporting afterwards. So I don't know if, how would you report to us? And you need to report that the student's enrolled in something. So I think unfortunately, the way our reporting is set up, reporting after the fact isn't really successful in terms of the NCBOs. But I'm open to sort of talking it through with you and seeing if we can think about it. Okay. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm trying to get my head around.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is, even if you say it's 8 hours and they finished in 6,
right,
you can still turn it in for 8? Is that what you're saying?
Well, here's the challenging part, because it's not about the amount of time. Just like you'll have a course and some students will do homework for 3 hours a night. And some students maybe will do 10 minutes a week. And we still give the student credit for completing that course when they complete that course because if they've mastered the material. And that's how we've tried to think about this, but we just want to be a little bit careful so we don't think about it in a way where students really are able to go through and master things that maybe they already knew. And that's part of where the diagnostic comes in and thinking about really what does this student need. And I know a lot of places think about building it. So maybe you build models where the student are assigned a one SCH intervention, and then when they get through that, you put them in the next one SCH intervention with the next set of material. So rather than saying, oh, this student really seems to need all the material in the class, and you put them in and they're done real fast, you put them in one block, one SCH or a half an SCH block at a time. When they're done with that module, you'll know they've mastered it. That's another way to think about doing it. So there's different ways to go about it, but it's, I think, better to think about it as structuring it beforehand just because of how our reporting works. But we are looking at that data. There is a course start date and end date in the S, and that is, that does provide us some assistance in terms of understanding that. But usually that's set up at the beginning also. Okay, I do want to mention that you only have to report non-course based options on the S and the 1 and 4 and the OE1 if you are putting in for funding. Institutions can report non-course based options on the CBM 002. It's items 23, 43, and 63. If they're not putting in for funding, state funding for those, and then you don't have to report them on all of the other reports. But we want to know you're doing them, and it's in our rules that institutions need to be offering these non-course based options for students. So there is a way to report that on the 2, and I'll mention that when I get to the 2. Okay, here's something that we've had a lot of questions about, and I want to make sure everyone's aware of this. If you have a student who, if you're structuring your non-course based options as something that happens before the semester starts. So say you test all your students and you find, all right, here's a group of 50 students that were really close to meeting the TSI standard, but they didn't quite get there. You can go ahead and have an intervention for those students before school starts. Maybe a week. We've talked about up to a week or 2. I've had people say, can we do 2.5? If you're going to have something, especially if they're incoming students before the school starts in the fall semester, you can report those interventions in the fall semester to us. You don't have to report them in the summer because often those students aren't even enrolled in the summer, and you'd have to enroll them, and it gets really complicated. So we have told institutions that you can go ahead, stretch that at the beginning of the semester by a week or 2, so that if you are bringing students in who tested not ready, to get them into some kind of intensive boot camp, bridge program, whatever it is, to try to get them ready so they can start right in that first college level, course, then you can report that to us in the fall. In this example, and if the student came in and tested not ready on the 2, you tell us they came in not ready, and then they met by the end of semester. So you will get credit for getting that student ready, and that's important for community colleges for success points. So we'll know they tested not ready, and then again, it was because of your intervention, because we're seeing a whole new world out there in terms of DE and what's working and what people are doing, and that's, I think, becoming more common. Yes.
I just had a question. If we're reporting those refresher courses 3 weeks prior to the semester starting and including those on our reports, has the state thought about extending the number of weeks out, maybe further out instead of the 3 weeks, maybe 4 or 5 weeks out?
I think it really gets, then you're offering a summer course. You really are offering something in the summer if it's not just, a little bit before school starts. We just had a problem with schools not wanting to do those programs for incoming fall students, and finding it a real challenge to enroll them for the summer in those. So I think it's stretching it to go beyond 2 weeks, to be perfectly honest. And I don't want to give permission for any more than 3. Yes?
Now, is that limited to the CBM-S? Say if it's reported in the CBM-2.
This would be reporting the student for everything, on all the reports, as a fall student who was taking an intervention. So on the 2, they'd be coming in, they would be showing up on the 1 as a fall student. You wouldn't have them showing up as a summer student. You'd just be reporting them on the 1 with their DE hours, and you'd be reporting them on the 2 that they came in not ready, and here's what they scored on the TSIA assessment. And then, if they did get ready as a result of that intervention, then that they got ready during the semester. I hope this is following. So basically, you're just treating those interventions that happen right before your traditional start date as part start of your semester and not as something that happened in the summer before. So that's what it is. So just for all the reports, consider it this is something happening during the semester.
So that intervention happened prior to that three weeks out, not a core, it's just an intervention. We wouldn't report it for that fall.
You may. Yes, you don't have to. And 3 weeks is pushing it. I guess I've told people 3 weeks, but no more than that. But it's definitely, we're trying to make it easier for you because a lot of the research has shown that has been helpful to have those, get students in before the semester starts, get them through their DE, especially those bubble students who are close to meeting. So as people do that, we're trying to make it easier on the reporting side for all of you. Okay. Flex entry. All right. I did want to say I think people do pretty well with flex entry reporting. We've had to use it more and more as we've gotten all these non-traditional activities going on. We've got block scheduling, we've got compressed courses, we have so many different things going on, and thank you for your efforts to understand flex entry and to use it to report those students in courses that start after census dates or courses that span multiple semesters. As I mentioned before, there's a flex entry table. We'll try to add something about reporting on the 8 related to flex entry. And it's always important to remember, and this is on that table, that if someone starts a course in the middle of, for example, in October, but they finish by the end of the semester, you can report it on the S for that semester. On the end of semester reports for that semester, it's just going to show up on the 1 and the 4 as flex in the next semester. So we provide that information in the flex entry table. Okay, and then I just have the course. We have course begin and end dates, and just to make sure people use those. I know they were helpful in some research some folks were doing on developmental education to get a sense for who's doing some of those shorter compressed DE interventions and courses versus the interventions and courses that last the full semester. So please be sure to get the dates captured. It's also helpful to us if you are doing compressed courses. For example, I know there's a community college that is doing a lot of 8-week courses. That's a way for us to know and to be able to understand that that's happening. So please be sure to get those dates. Okay. So any questions on the S before we move to the OE1? Janet, did you have anything to add? Or you're good? Okay. Thank you.
Okay, the Community College Student End of Semester Report, CBMO E1. It's very similar, almost exactly like the CBMO 01. Again, it reflects all students enrolled at the reporting institution as of the final day of the semester, unlike the CBMO 01, which is the census date. Student demographic data is collected again. Now, there are 3 extra reports on this. As you saw in the little picture, everything kind of matches. So on the OE1, it'll look for CBMO S records not included on the OE1, E1 records not included on the S by semester credit hours and contact hours, and also the E1 records not included on the S. So whereas on the 1 and the 4, we would have 100 or 50 or 100 semester credit hour allowance. On this one, since everything is reported by student, pretty much it'll show that this student was reported with 6 hours, 6 semester credit hours on the E1 and 9 on the S. So that points you really directly to where the mismatch is at on the reports. It's an end of semester report, and the semester credit hours and contact hours reported must match on the OOS again with those 3 reports. University, student end of semester report, again, it's going to be like the university CBMO 01. Again, reflects students at the reporting institution as of the final day of the semester. Demographic information, same. Again, S records not included on the E1. E1 not included in the S, only by SCH since there's no contact hours reported on the university reports. And E is not included in the S. Again, it's an end of semester report. And again, this SCH must match the SCH on the S. Are there any questions about the E1? Good. So we can go back to Paul.
Since Paul's here, yeah, why don't we, we'll pick up the 2 after, since Paul came down to help us with the 8 for the CTCs, we'll move to him next.
Sorry for my absence. Oh, the trigger again. Okay, so like we promised earlier, we'll do a separate piece for the community college, which does have a couple of nuances that are different. Again, it reflects employees of the institution who are paid a salary or received benefits associated with the institution who have any type of faculty appointment, regardless of the source of funds or their assignment during the year. Faculty demographic data is collected. Salary and appointment percentages are collected. Again, this is a semester report, but as you said earlier, only fall and spring. That is a difference from the universities, of course, that have a summer 8 report. The information is used in the accountability system, and not so much for any HRI reports, though. My mistake there. So this is a similar looking slide. We do the same thing for the budgeted average faculty salaries report. We double it. We convert it to a full-time equivalent, but we do it a little differently. We don't just divide it by the percent of time. In this case, for this report, we're only looking at full-time, 100% teaching faculty. So we've got a much smaller or much, I guess, tighter restriction on who's included in this report. And so in order to convert it, we basically convert everybody to a 9-month contract. So you report to us the contract length, and if, for example, you give us a 10.1 month contract length, we'll take the salary you report in the fall, we'll double it, then we'll multiply it by 9 and divide it by 10.1, and that would be your FTE salary. That can get a little confusing if you're trying to map what I'm putting on the report back to what you gave us in the first place. And again, these faculty salaries show up on the faculty salary page. Not used for the general academic study, but definitely used in the accountability system where appropriate. And so the duplication issue is exactly the same, except values 1 through 23 are identical. And it has the same impact. If you don't get these identical, then you start to duplicate faculty counts and FTE summaries, and that'll cause issues. So pretty easily identified. You just have to check to make sure those fields are identical for every faculty member. The last issue we have is the contract length issue. And I've got to say, on the community college side, it seems to be a little trickier. We especially get people who report the contract length for the semester instead of the contract length for the whole year. And it is a bit confusing if you have a faculty member that you're only hiring for the fall. We'll see a 4.5 month contract length on there, when actually what we expect you to report is the annual equivalent of it. So you're giving us the fall salary, but you're giving us the full year faculty contract, and that is just a little weird if you're only hiring the person for the one semester. It doesn't happen too often, but when it does, it often throws the report out of range, and you'll get that wonderful email from me or from somebody else here at the coordinating board saying, hey, something doesn't look right. And I think what I did was just talk through this next slide right there, because I deal with the issue so often. It's not hard to remember. Okay, and I've gone past my scope. Does anybody have any good questions? Oh, we do. We have several good questions. They're coming with a microphone. I was just upstairs listening, and it's awfully strange when you don't have a microphone and you're asking a question.
I have a question. On the edit summary, I get a list of instructors and classes that are not supposed to be on that report. Either they were already reported for the past term or should be reported for the next term, and they're under classes taught by non-reported faculty. How does that list get produced, and is there any modifications to get it taken off?
So this is the 4-8 problem, right? The match problem. And I think it's in years past when the 8 was a census date report, as well as the CBM 04, and this is mostly for community colleges. We actually threw a hard error if your 4 and your 8 did not match. So when the 8 went to a end of semester report, there was talk about taking that match out, because what it would it really only comes about if the faculty that was teaching the class in the prior semester, so the 4 would be reported census date in fall, but is that right? No, the 4 would be reported in the spring. If this was a fall report, the flex entry, the course will be flex entry. The course would be reported in the spring semester, but the 8 would not be reported. But the 8 would be reported for the faculty in the prior semester in the fall because it was end of semester. Then that faculty member did not teach a course in the spring. Therefore, you've got this 4 record out there with no matching faculty. We knew that would happen. We talked about leaving that report out, but every semester we find problems between the 4 and the 8. So we really need to leave that. We do ask that you just say these were flex entry courses that were, reported in the spring from the fall semester, and the faculty members did not teach class in the spring, therefore they could not match. I'm not sure how we would get around that. We can talk about it and look at it some more, but I think the mindset is still there because it happened for so many years that that 4 and the 8 couldn't have a mismatch, and everybody wants those to match, and it really doesn't have to be that way right now. We backed off of that.
Good. I did want to mention I pulled up the flex entry table, the reference that we provide, and we did include some examples for how to report the flex on the CBM 008. So that is in that table. We've had a couple questions come in from the field about flex entry and wanting more detail. And in the interest of time, when we conclude the presentations, I'll be happy to stay. And apparently we have the broadcast till 5, so I'll do an explanation for those who stay on at home, maybe in a little bit more detail about flex entry, and we can put the chart up, because I know it does get confusing, and we've had more and more flex entry type courses happening. Okay.
You going to do your 2?
I'm going to do my 2. I guess I'll stay here for this, so you can have a nap. No, I'll work through this quickly. We always get lots and lots of questions on the 2, but I believe we also do more training on the 2 than anything else in terms of sessions that we do around the state. So I think I'll go through the whole presentation, and then I'll take I'll take a few questions. We don't have a whole lot of time to go into it, so I'm also happy to answer questions when we're done in terms of the 2. So if you have questions that aren't super specific to your institutions but are general questions, please do share these when I finish. The 2 is, we have the 2 because of statute, because of the TSI statute, which requires institutions to assess students' academic skills. And as you can see, it has been amended every year, or I should say every session, for the past 5. And so that's one reason the 2 is a bit challenging, is because it seems like after every session we have to make changes to it to adjust for changes to the TSI statute. So we know it's challenging, and we appreciate the work that you do for reporting. Now that we have student success points at the community colleges, we've had a lot more interest in the 2. I think people are really trying hard to get that reported correctly, because institutions it is tied to funding for community colleges. The 2 is an end of semester report. As I mentioned before, the introductory materials are very important. In fact, we have to go in and make a change now, because we had legislation that now allows students who have taken college prep courses to use those courses for up to 2. Those courses can be used up to 2 years after a student graduates from high school. So we already have a change we know that's coming down the pike after this session. In working with the 2, the most important thing to understand is we have some introductory items. Many of them look very similar to what we have on all our reports. We collect race, ethnicity information, etc. But we do have one introductory item about waivers and exemptions. I'm going to talk about that in more detail in a few minutes. Then we move into the subject area items, and we have numbered them so that an item that's number 20 in math is going to be number 40 in reading, is going to be number 60 in writing. 21 in math, 41 in reading, 61 in writing. And those of you who use reports understand that, but it's very helpful in terms of thinking about it and understand. We're pretty much asking the same questions for math readiness, then reading readiness, then writing readiness. We did add, last fall, we added some ABE diagnostic level questions because there was interest in the field and learning. Well, first of all, it was important because we couldn't tell if a student was ABE or DE without getting these diagnostic levels reported to us. So that is something that you all should be doing now, and it's on the report. In terms of our FTIC students, one of the big challenges with the 2 is most of our accountability measures, the measures we report out for the 2, we track first-time in college students. So were students ready when they first got to college? And then did they get ready over time? And then when did they take their first college-level course? That type of thing. But when you report information to us on the 2, it's for all of your students. And when you get back your edit reports, it's for all of your students. So it's often not until later. For example, when the almanac comes out and people open up and say, whoa, this data doesn't look right for my institution, or when accountability comes out, it's often then that we'll realize, well, there was some misreporting, but it got buried because you couldn't see information about your FTIC cohort and what they look like for readiness. So you couldn't see that, hey, we'd reported ACT, SAT exemptions, but we missed it this year, so we're not reporting a single student in our first time in college cohort with those exemptions, and we should have been. That type of thing has happened a lot. So Charlie Busby on our staff, who works with the 2 data, has created a special report where he is able to pull the items you normally see on the edit check related to the 2 and readiness for your FTIC cohort. And we're right now trying to think about the best way to get that information to you. But we're going to try to, whether we do it on the secure server, or we post it somewhere, or we look to see if there's real discrepancies from past years and we just provide the information to institutions with issues, we don't know. But we have created a report that our analysts will be able to run to just see, hey, what does my FTIC cohort look like? Does it look similar to last year? So that, gee, when that almanac does come out, it will all make sense, and we won't realize, we didn't quite, get the data right for those first-time students. So I'm very pleased that we're going to have that moving forward. Waivers versus exemptions, very simply, waiver is a term related to the TSI report. Obviously, we use waivers for that terminology is used for lots of things in terms of reporting and funding and all of that. But in terms of the TSI report alone, waiver is used for reporting. It is not used otherwise in terms of the TSI statute and rules. So if you're talking to someone who's not familiar with reporting and you're using the term waiver, you're probably going to really confuse them. The reason we report in terms of waiver waivers versus exemptions for reporting, and this has been done for years, went back to long before I started with TASP, is because there are some exemptions that when a student is exempt, once they enroll, they are always exempt. ACT, SAT, etc. And then there are some exemptions, and they're called exemptions in the statute or the rules, where they might apply one semester. Say when a student enrolls as a level 1 certificate student, and then the student enrolls as seeking an associate degree, and that they have no longer got an exemption for TSI. And so we have used the term waivers in situations where it is not a permanent exemption. Now, when these college prep courses came through in statute through the legislature 2 sessions ago, then suddenly we had a situation where a student could take a college prep course and be considered met at an institution, exempt at an institution that accepts that course or that helped develop that course, but not met somewhere else. So we just carried over the waiver term for those students as well, because it's going to vary. So students from college prep courses are also reported with a waiver. The key thing with that is that when we run your data, it's to say, here's how many students met coming in and here's how they did moving forward. If you're accepting that college prep course and saying that student is ready with a waiver because of a college prep course, we're going to consider them ready in our reports. So we're going to say, all right, here's your students who met coming in and here's how they did on their first college level course, et cetera. Because that's really how your institution has said by accepting that prep course, hey, we think this student is ready. We're going to accept students who have completed this course that we've reviewed, we helped develop. So that's how it will be viewed when we report out. So I just want to make sure everybody understood that moving forward. You're telling us they're waived, but don't get nervous. It says not ready or waived. But we have a place in item 22 for the waivers, and I'm going to quickly just go to there. We have a place where that college prep, here it is, where you can tell us the waiver is for a college prep course, so we can know which waivers were college prep and which were other things. So that's a key new thing to understand. Quickly, in terms of the waiver on item 10, we do have some people who get confused. Item 10 applies to all of the courses, so if you have someone who has a waiver on a level 1 certificate, they're going to be waived for math, reading, and writing. So you can just tell us that here. If they're enrolled in dual credit, and they met eligibility standards but not TSI standard, that's going to be a waiver. Okay. If they're in active military, that's going to be a waiver that doesn't apply to subject areas. We have some blanket exemptions, like for past military folks or for people who have earned degrees from other institutions, et cetera. We also have a waiver now that applies. It's a different type of waiver, but it's for students who require ESOL, and it just basically waives them from TSI until they're ready to even take a test. So we have waivers and exemptions, and this item, it just sort of keys us in with reporting that, hey, this person has a waiver and exemption. But when you get to those subject area, that information, it's also important that you let us know there about the waivers. Item 20 changed this time through. It didn't change for item 40 and 60 in terms of algebra and math. We had some changes just related to math on item 20. I think we spent a lot of time training on this, so I'll be happy to answer questions when I'm finished, but this is for those students in those algebra who are doing DE for algebra intensive coursework on that pathway versus doing DE that will prepare them for non-algebra intensive courses. So you can tell us now, and I think most people are aware of this, that a student who required DE, that student is now ready to move into non-algebra intensive college-level math courses. One thing that we've had confusion around relates to the student's initial testing, initial placement. The TSI assessment is strictly for determining if someone is ready, or I shouldn't say strictly for, but a student who tests as ready on the TSI assessment for math, they're ready for any math at all. We don't have different cut scores for algebra intensive and non-algebra intensive. So that's really important for people to understand. The prep course, up to this point in time, is structured the same way. If someone passes that prep course and your institution agrees to accept it, then they are considered ready as if they had met the standard on the TSI test. They're ready to go into algebra or non-algebra intensive coursework. Again, things morph and change. I've heard a lot of conversations, but right now that's what we're looking at in terms of reporting. So be sure you have that understanding that it's not related to initial placement. It's those students who were initially tested, didn't meet the standard. They can go in a DevEd pathway that will get them ready for non-algebra intensive, or a DevEd pathway that will get them ready for algebra intensive. The college prep course does apply item 20, 40, and 60 in terms of the college prep course waiver, and I just talked about that, so hopefully that's pretty clear. And it's just a little more information about the college prep course that I think I talked about. I did have one thing come up. This was good for me to be reviewing all of this. 21, 41, and 61, where you tell me it's a prep course. The student had a prep course waiver. It's only set up to say they had a waiver because my institution created the course, or they have a waiver because we're following an MOU. We may need to think about creating something that said they had a waiver and they transferred to me, and so I'm going to honor that, because they had a waiver and they're done with their math. I don't know how else you would report that student. The institution could still report them as they had a waiver and now they're transferred to me instead of reporting them as ready. And that gets a little complicated. I won't go into it now, but that's something we probably want to think about. If we have a transfer student who had a prep course waiver, generally, if they took their math and they successfully completed it, the receiving institution can review that as any other college level coursework and say, yeah, they've met or not. Okay. So let me just move on to, we have these items for the assessment test used at placement. Everyone should be giving students the TSI assessment now. People should not be using, for TSI purposes, AccuPlacer or Compass or MAPS or any of those old tests. That's all changed, and everyone should be using the TSIA assessment. I had a question come in before the training. Tell me the difference between TSIA, TSI assessment, et cetera. It gets confusing, but basically the TSI assessment was shortened and people now refer to it as the TSIA. It's the exact same thing. So sometimes it's spelled out, sometimes it's not, but it is the state assessment for TSI. We're calling it, again, the TSIA in some places. So didn't mean to confuse people if they thought there were two different tests out there. It's just the one test. Okay. Talked about the diagnostic scores, and I also talked earlier about the fact that if someone does an NCBO, you can report. This is the item 23, where you can say, yeah, they were involved. They participated in an alternative non-course based method for DE during this period. So that's where you'd tell us if you're not reporting it for funding. And if you are reporting it for funding, you can still tell us here. You don't have to. Okay, and this last item, it is an important item that people get confused about. Why do we have items about students meeting at the beginning of the semester, and then you have an item about students meeting at the end of semester, but you can report to us, yeah, this student met at the beginning, so we're telling you on the end of the semester item that the person met at the beginning. The reasoning behind that, for those of you who weren't around when this was happening, is because we were told by a lot of institutions that they don't get the information that a student has met, the official information, until after the census date. And if your student information system is set up that you can't then tell us on the two that, yes, they met by census date, we gave you the option that if you don't get that information until November, you can enter it into your system on this item and tell us, yes, this student met by census date. So it's basically doing the same thing as item 20, saying, yep, the student had already met by the census date, but it allows you to tell us later. So for some institutions, this is a non-issue, and it's probably very confusing. For others, this is a lifesaver for them. This is a way for them to let us know, yeah, that student had met coming in, but our system, we had to put in their scores before our system would register that student, and if they gave us their scores late, the system had already rolled over, and we couldn't let you know that they'd already met. So that's why this item is here. Now, if people tell me that has changed and every system can account for students coming in, then we'll remove it. But that's why that's here. The other reason I want to talk about this item is this is where if you have a student who, if you're doing that NCBO at the beginning of the semester, even if it's done before the census date, we want you to tell us that student hadn't met coming in, and then this is where you can tell us the student, and I think I have it spelled out. Yeah, this is where you can tell us that the student met during the semester. So Yes, the student met at my institution. Oh, I'm sorry, I moved on to the next thing. So I guess I don't. Here it is, yeah. Nah, I didn't print that one out. Okay, well, in any case, you have an option to tell us that the student met at your institution during the semester. So please tell us that for the student if they weren't ready when they first came in and tested and you got them ready. Okay, and finally, first college level course completion. This is important. This should match the S. Sometimes it doesn't. It's important to make sure those are aligned. And we have ABE levels. So that's it for our CBM 002. Again, we've talked about this a lot. Are there any questions or comments? Okay, well, we're going to move on then. And again, I'll be happy to take questions when we're all finished, and I'll wait around. So if you've got something particular, feel free to bring it to us. Now we're going to move into reports just for CTCs, where Doug has already talked about them for universities. So I think he can focus on the issues on these reports that are specific to the community and technical colleges.
Okay.
And those from universities who want to leave us are welcome to head on out. Thank you all for joining us.
Talk about the student report, CBM 01. Of course, it reflects all students enrolled at reporting institutions as of the official census date. Again, demographic data is collected. Definitely census date report. It is used in success point calculations, and it is used in the accountability system and any CTC reports where student information is required. Oops. And here's the report layout. And we'll dive right into the 4, which is the class report. And again, reflects conditions as of the official census date and will report all students enrolled in coordinating board approved academic and technical courses for which semester credit hours are awarded. We collect information about the classes taught, semester credit hours, contact hours, location, instructor, etc., enrollment by level, affected or not affected by the SCH limit. Again, census date report used in the formula funding calculations and also used in the accountability system and any other CTC reports where it's required. One thing I wanted to add to that, though, is this fall we finally got the academic course guide on a database. So some of you may have seen some of our testing accidentally slipped in over the past couple of weeks, and we will be verifying that the class, the course, and the course number and the SIP code are all on the academic course guide manual. What we found in some of our testing is that most people report the classes just for the class name and number fine. The problem is it looks like the SIP codes kind of get changed up, like English 1301 may have an English 1304 SIP code or vice versa. So that's something, I think the only way we're going to be able to remedy that is what we're looking at is running some queries over what you reported in the fall and spring, deduplicate the courses, and just to make sure, send them out and show you what you may not be reporting correctly. This also would affect the CBMOS, but since the 4 is reported beforehand, it'll probably help you clean things up. Anyway, here's the layout. Again, we've got CBMO 1 and 4 contact hour and semester credit hour checks. The academic courses reported on the 1 must be within 250 hours of the contact hours reported on the 4. In technical courses, it's still 250 hours. And then the academic semester credit hours, which apply to the undergraduate limit reported on the 1, must be with 100 hours of those reported on the 4. Again, address all year-to-year review items on your edit reports when you send in your certification request. Are there any questions on that?
We had a couple from the field, too.
Maybe one or two.
I have a question. I'm from Alamo, and we have 5 colleges separately accredited. We report separately. And we have the restricted nursing programs at 2 of the institutions. And we're in one database. So we share our students. They might be enrolled in the nursing program at one of the colleges and then be taking an academic course at the other. And the way our reporting is, we have to change their major for the non-restricted colleges. So if at one school they're in the nursing and they go over and take the academic at the other, that other college has to change the subject major to be liberal arts in order to resolve the error that's created.
Okay.
Is there anything that we could do about that?
We may be able to do that. And in some of the other multi-campus, like San Jac and Lone Star and all that, I believe in the program it'll go through and it'll look for. So I guess this must be, we must be hitting against the program of the clearinghouse inventory,
yes.
Correct? Okay. So I believe we do that on some of the other ones. I don't know that it's, well, I guess because y'all were all separate at one time, everything was pretty much done separately.
Yes.
But now you're more together.
We have a single database.
Okay. So we may need to look into that. Would you send me an email with that? So what we'll do is basically we'll look for it. If we don't find it, we'll probably look at it at a district type level against all the rest. Yes?
I was going to ask regarding the review items. Sometimes it has 50%. Sometimes there's some items that are over 50% or over 100%, and they don't say review. So we don't have to address those. We only have to address the ones that say review, no matter what.
That's correct. Probably those items you're looking at may be you had 10 students, and now you have 15 students in the next year. And, yeah, it's 50%, but, 5 more students in the, in that program or whatever really isn't a big deal. I'm not sure how. I think we went to a minimum amount, type deal. If it was less than 10 students maybe or less than 20, and then it went up to a certain amount, we wouldn't flag those.
That one that you're talking about is the one that I did get a flag on, and it was like from 1 student to 2 students.
Oh, really?
It did have a review. That's why it's kind of,
right.
It doesn't make sense. So that's why I was trying to say.
So you want to review more things?
No, I do not. I do not. But that one had a review by it.
Okay.
But it was because 1 more student.
That's interesting.
Was in that category.
I wonder if that just kind of slipped in, because typically I wouldn't expect that to show up. Can you send me an email on which thing it was?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
We had 2 questions from the field, short ones. One wanted to know what they had to do to submit success points, and we calculate the success points at the coordinating board. So you just have to submit your regular reports, and we go ahead and calculate the success points from here. So that's easy. Someone else also asked about how we determine first time in college. We use the information that you provide to us to do first time in college. We use that FTTR field that comes in on the CBM 001. That's the first time in college or first time transfer. And if it's first time in college, as I explained before, and I don't want to do it in detail again, we will also go back and we will include everyone reported to us as first time in college if we're, for example, running a fall cohort, but we'll also, just for our fall cohorts, look back and see if you reported someone to us as first time in college in the summer. So that's how we do it. We do not make a decision. We look at the first time in college, and we use that what you've reported to us for the cohorts. Now, a lot of things like grad rates are run on first time full time, so you're unlikely to have someone who's first time full time in a fall at a community college and a university. Usually they'll be full time at one and maybe taking additional courses. So even if the place that told us they're taking a few courses reported them, we won't be capturing them in those first time full time cohorts. But we do use the information you give us, but as I explained before, we look back to the summer, and that's why it's very important if someone's with you in the fall, if they were somewhere else in the summer, but they really are truly first time in college, you need to let us know that in the fall.
We've got another question in the back.
When you're looking at the review items, how specific do we need to be in our justification, or how general can we be?
That's a good question. We just really need to know that you've really looked at them, and we really don't want to see. Yes, this accurately reflects what we have. We really want to see. Like the example I was using, a program has gone up 35% in number of students in that program. And, it would be really the best thing we'd like to see is to say, we opened up, we were able to hire more instructors to teach in this program, and therefore we were able to have more enrollments. Or, we went out and tried to recruit more students for it, and, this is showing a great success on it or something like that.
And I also want to add, even if something is not flagged, it's, you understand the context of what your numbers look like. You understand your data. And if you don't, there are people at your institution that do. And if your enrollments, your enrollments are down 5% and they show they're up 3%, you show a 3% increase and it's not flagged because it's not a very big percentage, you should still know something's wrong here. This doesn't look right. And the more you can understand, and if you're not someone in institutional research, make sure you work with the people who know what the numbers should look like. If you're reporting the 002 and you have no idea what happens in DE and who's ready or not from the assessment folks, make sure those people get a chance to see what's coming in. Use the people you have, the people who understand the data, as reviewers whenever possible. And you'll learn through that process too in terms of the context of what's being reported, because you can save everyone a whole lot of time if you pick up problems, even if they're not something that we pick up on the standard, hey, are we off by 25%? If you can pick up anything that just doesn't look right, it's hugely helpful to get that in the process. So I really encourage people not just to look at those that come in as questionable or those that come in as, very different from the year before, but just look at all the data, look at everything in the summary, and make sure it makes sense in terms of what you know about your institution and your numbers. That's my pitch for the day.
Well, and and all of this does go into calculations for money for your institution. So the best to report it accurately as possible.
Yeah, and the compliance folks will come around and want to see the numbers, and really it's you play an important role in catching things. So consider yourself. We have someone on the staff who calls himself the data detective, and just consider yourselves. His name is David. So he's Dr. David, the data detective. But he does a wonderful job of figuring out why doesn't this look right and what isn't happening here. And that really should be the role that all of you play. And it can be fun. I'm thinking of a TV series, but we'll see.
Okay, so now Anissa Wagner will tell us about the CBM 09.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Like Doug said, my name is Anissa Wagner. I'm one of the data analysts who work on the CBM reports for community and technical colleges. And thank you all for being here. So I'll be doing a brief overview of the CBM 009 graduation report, and I'm going to pray that my PowerPoint works here. Okay, what does the CBM 009 include? The CBM 009 include degrees and certificates which have been awarded to students in active coordinating board approved programs during the fiscal year. Also included are progress measures of students who have completed the core curriculum and are approved fields of study. The degree and certificate program approval codes for academic, technical, and continuing education programs must be on the Education and Training Clearinghouse Technical Programs Inventory. For short, we'll call it the Technical Program Clearinghouse or Inventory. If a student is awarded an associate degree and a certificate concurrently, a separate record for each award must be submitted. Each progress measure will be submitted in a separate record, but only once for each specific measure. So, for example, if you have a student who earned an AAS and a core completer in the same year, you will report those records separately. The due date for the CBM 009 report is October 15th. As institutions participating in the nursing shortage reduction program are required to submit their nursing graduates by October 1st. The nursing graduates must be error-free to be included in the count for funding. The remainder of the CBM 009 reports, the remainder of the CBM 009 records may be included in the submission with the nursing graduates, or they may be submitted in accordance with the October 15th due date. All graduates, including nursing graduates, must be on the final certified file. Okay, there currently are 11 approved field of study curricula with zip codes and parameters, and you can find them on page 9.2 of the CBM manual. And I wanted to point out that last year, the criminal justice field of study, the SIP changed to 430104.
And if I can interrupt, we have had some legislation that's going to focus on field of study, so I think we'll see some maybe expansion there, and it's going to be really important that institutions report those, and I think we'll probably see some expansion also in terms of existing fields of study, so that's important.
Okay, so now I want to talk about multiple awards. There's an edit check on the 009 edit program to identify reporting of multiple awards in excess of the number of award types within level and SIP approved on the technical program inventory. And a lot of people tend to miss this on their edit report. They certify and then they have these multiple awards. So they're found after the item number on the first page of your edit report. You'll see the multiple awards in excess of clearinghouse to be reconciled. And if it's anything other than 0, you want to come down on your edit and right above your awards, right above your errors and your questionables, you'll see the multiple awards. And it lists the number of awards reported. For example, the first one is 2, and then you want to verify the program clearinghouse, where there it says the number of awards in the clearinghouse is only 1 Cert 1. So you want to remove that extra record for that student. Does that make sense? Okay, and one of the common errors found on the CBM 009 is the major item 9 not found on the clearinghouse. And I just wanted to list some of the items that you want to check to make sure that they are coded properly. So item 8, level of award, item 9, the major, and item 13, the type of award. And last but not least, please justify all review items when you certify your reports, as Doug have been saying all along. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Okay, no questions.
Okay. Well, I want to thank Anissa, who volunteered to present one of the reports and take a little of the workload away from Doug and me. So excellent job. Thank you so much for doing that, Anissa.
First-time presenter, so please don't judge.
No, you did a wonderful job. Thank you. And many of you know Anissa because she does work with you on your reports.
I will. Okay. Yes, Rose Sproul, St. Philip's College, San Antonio, Texas.
Yes.
I do have a question for clarification on the nursing shortage reduction. Those are schools that are in that grant for the nursing shortage reduction?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Good.
That was good.
Okay, I see that it's 4 o'clock, and we have a couple of reports left. We actually did these in the order we did them in because in case we didn't get to everything. We are going to stay and work through the rest of the reports. I know some of you are here for TACRO tomorrow, and it's a little early for dinner, so you'll stick with us. If you do need to leave, feel free to do so. We thank you so much for joining us because we did say we'd be through at 4. And I realized when a little while ago that we didn't do an evaluation form, but this is kind of our first time to try to do a big training with lots of manuals all at once and with a very diverse audience. So if you do have any comments for how we could improve this or if we should target it differently, feel free to send an email to me or to Jana. We provided Jana's email address, or mine is just julie.eklund@thecb.state.tx.us, because we would like your feedback. If this sort of thing is helpful to just have everyone in one room and to talk and share questions, we'd like to know that. If we really feel like we should stick with, we were thinking more in terms of beginners, but we wanted to also give everyone a chance to ask questions. But if we should do something that this is really for beginners and this is really for experienced folks, that's something we could think about also. But we know your time is valuable, and we don't want to schedule too many different things either if there's not a purpose. I did want to mention also, usually at the TARE session, we do a beginner session on manuals. So again, if you can't stay, thank you for coming. And for those of you, it looks like many of you will stay, we'll move into the last few reports, and then I will do my little song and dance about Flex.
All right, we'll talk about the CBMOA report right now. It is continuing education student report. Again, reflects the students enrolled as of the official census date in continuing ed courses. The student demographic data is collected. Contact hours generated by the students are reported in different categories. Total contact hours on the A must be within 500 contact hours of the total contact hours reported on the C. This is an end of semester report. And the data is used in the accountability system. And again, any CTC report where continuing ed student information is required. There's the report. The CBMOC, which is the continuing education class report. Again, classes reported must include all specially approved education continuing ed courses and courses which we refer to as local need, and courses listed in the continuing education section of the Workforce Education Course Manual, or WECM as sometimes we'll call it. We collect information about the classes taught, the contact hours, location, instructor, etc. Enrollments at census date and end of course and non-funded are produced. And the total contact hours on the C must be within 500 contact hours of those reported on the A. End of semester report. This data is used in formula funding calculations, and the data is used in the accountability system. Yeah, there's Neil. The Marketable Skills Achievement Report will include Marketable Skills Achievement, or MSA, awards granted to students in active Coordinating Board approved programs during the fiscal year. This is a credit program of 9 to 14 SCH, or a workforce continuing education program of 144 to 359 contact hours. An annual report, and the data is used in the accountability system and any reports where MSA information is required.
And I do want to add for that, we do not include them when we're counting certificates. I know in some states they think of marketable, they'll have certificates. We do not include those awards when we count certificates. And I think that's important to know. We also had a question come in on the M, if you're okay, Doug, with that. It says, currently multiple awards are picked up on our CBM OOM, and institutions are submitting the report like that. Okay, maybe I didn't get that right. On the OOM, current multiple awards are picked up on our reports. So, I think this is it's from a district. Now it makes sense. So from a district, they're saying the institutions are submitting the report to them like that. How does the coordinating board choose which award to count? Now, I'm not sure what they're thinking about in terms of counting, because they can report multiple awards, correct?
I believe so.
So in terms of counting, they're not part of success points for counting. We don't include marketable skills for success points. They're not included for our completion, for our success goal for closing the gaps. They're not going to be included in our completion goals for our new 60 by 30 text plan, which those of you who are going to TACRA will get to hear me present about tomorrow. So in terms of counting, generally, sometimes we count awards. We're just counting students who earned an award. So if we were, reporting out on something about marketable skills, or how many students earned them, we'd count the students once. But generally, I guess we would count, or where we show them in accountability, we do count however many marketable skills awards are reported to us. So if that is about what shows in accountability, I believe they're all included. And you can click on the I definition button in accountability to see if that's the case. But I'm pretty sure, and I'll double check that now.
Okay, question?
Yes. We're a banner school, and the reports actually populate with multiple marketable skill awards.
Okay.
Those reports are submitted as is. And I know that we're not the only school that does that. It doesn't error out on the report. And my question is, if we were trying to really clean up our reports and go by the guidelines on the manual and only report one, which one, is there one marketable skill award that we should count over the other? And if we aren't doing that, how does the coordinating board actually select the one in their count? Is it just a number? And I'm sorry, I might have missed the answer. I was chasing the mic.
No, that's fine. And I think I need to go back and look a little more carefully at what we asked for the marketable skills. As I said, we don't use it for too many purposes, but we do, I think we have some place where we add them up. And we do ask that, I guess, that just one is included. I know it is used. For example, we have folks in Accelerate Texas programs, and sometimes we'll match, data given to us by the people in those programs against our Marketable Skills Award, just to make sure the people in those programs are being reported to us with the awards that the program staff is telling us they're being awarded with when they report the data separately. So I would say in terms of prioritizing, certainly if you have someone who's in an Accelerated Texas program, that would be a good example for, report that Marketable Skills Award to us on the M over something that maybe wasn't part of an organized program like that. But I will go back and look at that, and we can think about priorities. I did want to, and when I present the plan, I will mention we talked about this with the accountability groups. We have a marketable skills goal as part of our plan. It is not related to this award in any kind of direct way. And I'll talk about that more when I present the plan at TACRO. But we've even talked about maybe we need to change the name to ensure that we don't have confusion. But these are the awards. Again, they're voluntarily, I believe, reported to us. Is that correct, Doug? Or does everyone yeah.
Yes. Not everybody reports.
Not everybody reports them to us, and they're those small awards. In some states, they have certificates at this, with these few hours, but that's not the case in Texas. And generally, we add certificates to counts. Yes. Success point question. Yes.
I should maybe know this already, but is there a list of what all the success points items are?
Oh, we have lots and lots of information about success points, and I can give you great detail on that. The best place to go is to go online into our accountability system. Okay. And if you click on, I think it's under measures and definitions, and Janet is actually going online now. There is a bullet that says success points, and you can click on that, and there's some different background materials, and one of them is a flow chart. And we have a flow chart that'll actually walk you through, and we have explanatory materials where you can see all of the different success points, what the weighting is for those success points, and it even has information about how they're calculated. So that detail is there. We also show just how many points by institution in accountability. You can click on just the main points. It doesn't have the definitions, but you can also go in accountability and just see how many points did my institution get, and during last year and the year before. So I don't know, are we able to get there? Because I can quickly. Oh, Jana was opening something else up for me for my next part. But in any case, just catch me. I'll be happy to show you exactly where that is. But it's in accountability. If you click again on measures and definitions at the top of the main accountability page, you will see that. Jana, is it possible for you to take me to accountability without maybe minimize that? And I'll just come over and show you. Here we go. There's mics everywhere. Okay, so if you get to our main data page, which is the www.txhighereddata.org, then you want to look under online applications and select accountability. So here I am. I'm selecting accountability. I'm glad alphabetically it's first. It makes it easy to find. Okay, when you go into accountability, there's a couple things you can do. First of all, if you just want to see your points, on the main page on the right at the bottom, you'll see success points. You can click on that, and here's all the different points, and you can select an institution, wherever you want to go, and you can see how many success points were awarded. And these are the weighted success points. One thing about success points, it's important to remember that there is weighting. So, for example, you get 2 points for a degree that's earned versus getting 1 point for a student getting to 15 hours. So they're all listed here. There's readiness, completion of 15 or 30 hours, transfer, successfully completing a first college level course, degrees and certificates, and then there's a little extra bump for critical fields. But if you want more detail, and one thing you can also do here is you can hover over the I, and there's some more explanation there about how they're calculated. But in addition to that, you can go back up and go into measures and definitions here. So again, I'm going at the top of the first page, measures and definitions, success points calculation details, and here we have a data flow. This is the first, and this kind of walks through all the data, and then we have this wonderful flow chart. So you can kind of see, all right, where are the points and how are they calculated? It gives you information about, generally we use snapshot data for success points, but we do use something that's cohort-based when we do the readiness. So hopefully that will get you started, and if you have more detailed questions, we actually have logic flow documents that we've done for some of the calculations. And we provide our SAS code to anybody who wants it related to success points if you actually want to see in great detail. So we've tried to be as transparent as possible to make sure institutions have an understanding of how these work, especially because it's related to funding. Okay, well, let me just jump in now and do Flex, if that's okay. I'll quickly try to answer the Flex question, and then we'll conclude the presentation after any final questions, and then anyone who wants to stick around and learn more or ask more, they're welcome to do so. So I'm going now to, if you can see, we're in the appendices. I'm selecting Flexible Entry Appendix P. So does everyone know how to get here? You've been in the appendices for the manuals? Okay. So let me just, if I minimize this, can I minimize this by, okay. Okay, so here's a flex entry table. We did this a while back, but it all should still be applicable. And these are just examples. So what you need to think about is if you're thinking about something that isn't a fall course, it's a spring course, just change everything up by one semester and you'll have your answer in terms of something that happens at different times. And the exception to this would be what we learned today about the CBM 008 and the summer reporting. So that's something to keep in mind. So you'll see, for example, for the CBM 001, the only possible coding for Flex is a 1 or a blank. And that's because this is a beginning of semester report, and if you're telling us something is Flex entry on that, you're saying this student did not start by the census date, so I'm giving you this information in the following semester. Okay, if we're looking at our end of semester reports, for example, the 2 and the S and the OE1, we're going to have a situation where some students, and for example, on the 2, we tell you to leave flex entry blank if the course finished by the end of the semester, and I've had to correct what I did before. On the S, we tell you to tell us it's a flex entry 1, so I guess so we know to look for that on the 1 and the 4 coming in the next semester. So generally, we do differentiate on the end of semester reports between a flex entry 1 and a flex entry 6. The 6s we added when we got these end of semester reports when the S and the OE1 came in, so that you can tell us this is a course that started on a census date, for example, and spanned into the next semester, or started after the census date and spanned into the next semester. This is not a course that started within the same semester that it finished. So this is a good example on the 2. If you have a course that starts after the census date and it ends in the current term, you just leave flex entry blank. A course that starts after the census date, ends in the current term on the S, it's going to be a flex entry 1. It's not spanning semesters. But if you have a course that starts after the census date and ends in the following spring, that's when you start to see those 6s show up. Those are the courses that are the span courses that we use the 6 code to tell the difference. So I hope this is a little bit helpful, and you can walk through with the different examples, because on earlier reports, just traditionally, like the 4, we had FE instead of a 1 or a 6. So we didn't change that, so people had to recode. We just left that FE. And one reason we made this table is because it does get confusing to think about the different types of flex entry. So generally, think about it in terms of for beginning of the semester reports, you're just telling us if it's flex entry because you weren't able to get that information to us by the census date because the course started after that or was scheduled after that. For the end of semester courses, if they finish in that same, for the end of semester reports, if they finish in that same semester, you're either leaving it blank or telling us it's a 1. It's all done. Or if it's spanning semesters in any way, you're telling us it's a 6. So again, I don't want to go into every possible example, but I wanted to make sure people are aware of this, because the flex entry, it gets challenging, I think, once you sort of figure out the main pattern. It's not too bad, but we did put these examples out here because of we wanted folks to understand the differences. Okay, so any questions about flex? Yes. Oh, let me bring you a microphone, or someone can.
My question goes back to the sort of the root definition of how to determine whether a class needs to be flex, and it talks about that a class, when the class is organized, class is organized when students have registered and have paid or arranged, payment. So is that analysis done at the class level, or because I'm foreseeing potentially some students are going to be in there and paid before, and perhaps some students registering after the official census. So what is the recommendation? Should we just...
Doug's going to tackle that one.
Well, thanks.
Or I can if you'd like me to.
If is this a course that is kind of online and people can start prior and then start after, or?
So to date, we have the situation is that they start at a specific time, basically mid fall, for example. So there may be October 15th in that range. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the students probably do meet the qualification for it to be a reported as a regular course, but we foresaw that it's very likely and very possible that we could have some stragglers that really do come into the mix after the fact, and so it seemed dangerous to us to have this mix going on. Yeah. And so what is the recommendation?
Well, I mean, from what I've heard, if the student registers late for the class, I mean, you're just not going to get formula funding for it after the census.
Yeah, you can't split. You can't just tell us, oh, some of the students are flex in this class and some aren't, so I'll get the formula funding for the students who register late because I'll report them as flex in the next semester, because it's going to be a problem on the 4. If you're reporting the 4 to us for when the class was scheduled, in that fall, you're going to tell us on the 4 we've got this class going, and you can't tell us, my understanding is you can't tell us the next fall that, oh, well, I'm going to just add people to that class that I already reported to you, but these are flex people. You either have to tell us, oh, we had a flex class that started in the fall, but we didn't report it in the fall, correct? Or we had the class start in the fall. It's my understanding you can't split a course across 2 semesters and report the part of the same course as flex and not. Am I correct there, or is that?
Yeah, you really shouldn't, but I guess just to make sure I'm understanding, so is the course flex anyway? Did it start after the census date of the semester?
It definitely does. The actual, it's within our system. We have sessions within the term, and it definitely is like we have a 7-week at the beginning of the session, and then a second 7-week session that are our what we've been counting as flex. But I guess I'm just kind of looking for confirmation is the way we've been approaching that. The safest and most correct way to do it.
So you've got students. I mean, so you've got the class, and is it already meeting, and then people are then registering late for it and allowing to come in late? Is that correct?
No, it's a lot of the students may be registered for that second 7-week session. Perhaps they are registered by the official census date early on and are meeting the qualifications, but I don't think they all are. So,
but the class is not started yet.
It's
correct?
Not started.
And the students, the rest of the students, though, the ones that are not at census date, they've not. I mean, they're still allowed to register for the class, and the class goes on. I would say you would put all of the students in a flex class and then report them in the next semester.
Yeah, that would be my response too. I think otherwise, if it is just stragglers, like Doug said, it would be okay to lose. Then you're not going to get the funding for those couple additional students that might come in. But you would have that in a class maybe that started before the census date too. But if you really feel like you're going to have students, there will be some students who come in, who register it before the class starts, but after the census date. You want to get credit for all those students, and we really don't want to have split reports coming in. I could see problems on the 8. I could see problems in a lot of ways. If you've got a class that you're telling us on the 4, you've got this class, and then you're reporting the same exact class. It's not a different class, it's the same class, but you're just telling us additional students. I think that would be problematic in terms of a lot of the things that we do with the data for formula funding.
Possibly talking about an open entry, open exit class?
Well,
or
that's kind of what I was. Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about at first. That I thought that's what she might have been. Where they say, during this semester you can start at any time, and what we've advised people is that anyone who starts the class prior to the census date of the semester should be in one section, and then the rest of the students that start after the census date should be in a second section.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could carry that forward if you wanted to set it up as 2 separate sections, what the example you were giving. Then the problem is that you might just have 1 or 2 students, and in terms of what that means for your facilities use and those reports, showing with 1 student in a section when really they were all in the same class, sitting in the same room for the same amount of time. I guess it'd be a possibility, but I'm concerned
These are typically online.
Yeah, no, those are online, and I think that multiple exit entry is okay in that case. But I think maybe, it probably would be best to just call them flex, and then you're going to get everyone, and it'll be reported accurately for funding and for our purposes. So please do that. Okay. Anything else? You've got us here as a captive audience. I'm really impressed that so many of you are still here. So thank you. You're all very dedicated. It was a long stretch of time without a break, and we did power through a lot. Yes, Jamie. Oh, that is an excellent question. I'm glad you asked it. Yes, but we don't know what, and so we are going to need. And the question was about tracking competency-based education. What we have now is we do have some competency-based programs that are going on out there, but they are basically structured so that they're still kind of around a course, so that the competencies have been crosswalked to a course. We have, behind the scenes, we have provided some coding options for institutions that are doing that, so we can collect the data. You're probably aware that there is a pilot going on with South Texas College and A&M Commerce, and there's some other places, and if you are doing something and it's around a course, you can get in touch with us and we'll give you that special instruction. We're probably getting close to the point where we'll put that in the manual so folks will know about it, but we just wanted to sort of see how the coding worked, and people need to understand they need to get the proper SAS permission, the SACS permission, everything else if they're going to move to this. What's happened now, though, is we are now aware there are some institutions through a grant who are doing competency-based where it is not going to be directly affiliated with the course. And so we know we're going to need to have a new report. And we have already started thinking about what that might look like. We have a person in our area that works with innovation, policy and innovation, who's been already gathering some folks together to talk about competency-based education. Some of you might have been pulled in on those phone calls, and I said, make sure you ask them to bring reporting officials because... And I think moving forward, we'll probably have an agenda for one of those calls with that group to talk about reporting, because we are going to need something new, and we want your feedback about what's going to be most appropriate for tracking competencies that don't tie back to courses. It's pretty easy when you tie back to courses in terms of reporting. It becomes a whole new world if you don't.
Well, the tying back to classes, though, you get to the point where are they considered internet, or are they considered special internet? We're going to need to be able to distinguish, because they are kind of online type courses for some.
Yes.
And that kind
and
of thing.
Probably we could, put out some instructions for, hey, are you doing competency-based? Here's what it can look like, and here's some ideas to help with reporting. And that group could even talk through some of that. But we are, as I said, we are going to also need to have some kind of new report. I think the formula funding committees, Paul, will probably, when they meet, they'll probably talk about this.
We're anticipating a charge for the formula advisory committees to discuss competency-based education. They had it as a charge last time. Their recommendation was, as Julie said, that you convert the modules and align them to courses and report the courses on the full report once the student has completed all the modules for a particular course.
Right.
And that's the way funding's working right now.
Okay. The other question I have, and since you're still here, Paul, because I wanted to confirm, and on our 008 for community colleges, I'm pretty certain we're reporting the year's salary for our full-time faculty, because we get an error that says this person's making over a certain amount of money. I'm almost certain, Tina? Yeah, we report the whole year salary, and you had it doubled, so it was kind of confusing me, because on our report, we report their year's salary if they're full-time faculty, and we get the error report like they make over $75,000 or they make more than $80,000, and it comes out as a warning, and we have to go review those. So I just wanted to make sure, because you had it doubled, and I didn't want mine doubled because I have enough trouble.
I'll have to look into that and see what we're doing with it.
Yeah, we haven't changed a lot of those things in years and years.
Yeah.
So it may be that finally the salaries have finally crept up enough that it's triggering those warnings, but that's just the salary it is.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
But I mean, we have to review them all. And, and I'm almost certain it's the full year salary, because that's what you're saying. If you're making over a certain amount, we have to go in and review all those. So I just wanted to make that clear, since you had doubled on there. I didn't want...
Yeah, what I'm doubling is not the same thing as what's going on in the edit report. Those are two separate...
Yeah, but I mean, what I'm reporting in that field, though, I think is the full
annual.
year salary.
Okay, well, I'll look into it and see if that's not an incorrect slide.
Okay.
I'll double check.
And we also report their full year contract. That's what we've always done it that way. Full year contract and full year salary.
You definitely need to report their full year contract. I've run into that error and had to have it corrected.
Tom?
You talked about someone who's spearheading the discussion on reporting competency-based instruction.
Mm-hmm.
If we want to plug into that discussion and know who to contact, who is that?
Judith Sebesta.
Say again?
Judith is her first name, and it's Sebesta, Sebesta. And she's here at the coordinating board, and I can also let her know that you might be interested. I think your institution is one of the ones. Is your institution one of the ones that's involved? I know that, or yours is, Jamie. Yeah, there is some kind of grant that's been awarded with special approval from the federal government to do some pilots, and they're not going to look, typical in terms of what people are doing. So we're sooner rather than later, we're going to need to have a reporting in place for these competency-based programs. But I'm sure most people understand it's pretty complicated in terms of SACS approvals and all those kinds of things. And I think certain institutions have permission to do things because it's part of a pilot. But that's part of why we haven't included coding and all of that. Is we don't want the cart to lead the horse, so to speak, and have people think, oh, this is in reporting, so we can go ahead and do these things, because some of it is, right now could get you into trouble with the accreditors and all of that. So, in any case, but we would love feedback as we do start to move through this. It's a whole new world, and we thought NCBOs were hard, and some of that's why we think it's a new report. As much as we've been able to fit a square peg into a round hole, as things have changed, this is so different that I don't think we can fit it into our current manuals, our current reports. Yes.
I have a question about the Hazelwood report and the CBM-1. We report the tuition exemption or the waiver code. Is that data compared against the Hazelwood report?
It was at one time, but the Hazelwood report now rests with the Texas Veterans Commission. Okay. So they'll probably just supply SSN. If we ever do any kind of joint reporting, they'll probably just supply the SSNs to us, and we'll pull what we have.
Okay.
On the Web Focus report, we'll go out there and we'll click on, or I'll go out there and I'll click on the percentages of completion of our reports. And I notice on there it says days past due. Mm-hmm. Trying to understand, knowing that we submitted on time, what does that really mean?
That was a pretty busy report out there. To tell you the truth, I still use what I think they call the classic report. There's a little button up there.
The legacy report?
Thank you. That's the one I typically use. When the programmer was doing it, they thought, well, it'd be good to show, past due of the due date. Tried to kind of tell them, well, it's not really that way. We give them 6 weeks, stuff like that. But we don't look at it as anything bad or anything like that. So, is that not yet? Right? Well, we've always had the ability to pull that if we wanted to, but so I wouldn't worry about it.
I had a question about the number of times we submit reports lately, because some technical difficulties on your end and some issues on our end. We have to submit, or even the fact that you have to submit them a couple times just to make sure you're in balance and the edits reflect that. One of the things I had heard before was that the CB would be taking note of the number of times we submit. So I was wondering what that is, what you're looking at right now in future audits. How is that going to be looked at?
Well, in the past, when the SAO, State Auditor's Office, was tasked with auditing the institutions, that was part of the thing that they looked at. We could definitely advise them. We had problems at this time. People were having to resubmit and all that. Now the SAO doesn't do the audits anymore. I haven't been asked for that information in probably 4 or 5 years. Typically, when somebody goes out to audit your institution, our internal audit staff ask the questions. Do they have a new reporting official there? Did they change software, from Banner to Colleague or to Genzabar or whatever? That's never asked of me. No.
Right. So having a high number of submissions is not necessarily a negative thing.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we've gotten to the point these days, where I would probably argue that, well, if they get it back, and if y'all get it back and you correct it and get it back in again, that's not a bad thing. You could wait a whole week or two, I guess, and save it all up. But I mean, what good does that do anybody? Exactly. From the main, we used to have a room about a quarter of this size just for the tapes we would get. And it was about a week turnaround, right?
I have another kind of back to the basics question. Okay. Just taking a step back, looking at the manual, all the details. The sort of definition of a post-bac student, someone who's not admitted to a graduate program and also not enrolled in an undergraduate program.
Right.
So where does that leave a second bac student? How should they be classified?
Second baccalaureate?
Yes.
Yeah, they're just a
Yeah,
student.
you need to go ahead and so we have had this question a couple of times. So the student goes back for a second baccalaureate. They're probably gonna be classified. Well, you should probably classify them as the number of semester credit hours. I don't. Let me ask this: can you, when they go back in, how how many more hours they need to get their degree? Is that is that easily found? Could you classify them as a junior?
I would have to really have a discussion internally. It's not something we've talked about.
Right.
Up to now.
I mean, typically we would like to have them, reported as kind of what they are to get back to their second degree, whether it be a junior or senior or whatever.
Wow.
How many hours, you've allowed them towards
even though
the
they
thing.
already have a bachelor's degree.
Yes.
So we're going
because
back to the junior, senior.
For undergraduate limit, once they get their bachelor's degree, they'll go back to 0 hours. But then they'll start building those undergraduate hours back up towards the limit again. It's doubtful they're ever going to get there, but you never know, I guess.
So they would be, once again, subject to the 30, 45 hour rule.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Doug, I'm just going to interrupt for a minute. I'm being called into a meeting. I can come back down hopefully shortly, but if there were any questions for me that people, anything else that you think you'd like me to be here to answer? Okay, well, you've got Doug. He's the answer man, and
I'm here all night.
Again, thank you all. I will come back down. You may all be gone by then, but thank you all so much for coming. I hope it was helpful, and again, you can continue to ask questions if you'd like. Thank you.
We have any more, or everybody's just leaving with Julie, huh?
Once I'm gone,
that's right. Party's over. Julie's gone. Thank y'all.
Thank you.